Hello, everyone.
Hello.
We are back, thankfully. Thank you all for your patience with us getting this podcast um, out to you all. Cole and I sometimes don't do things quickly. Well, very rarely do we do things quickly. I would say busy, intentional, and just kind of perfectionist to a degree.
Yeah. We're thoughtful. We like to ruminate on things before they go out.
Yeah, we like to steep our thoughts.
Yeah, it's like a good cup of tea.
Yes. But since the last season, I got a dog, and his name is Six, the number, not spelled out. And
You've had him for over a year now.
yeah,
It's been quite a break.
Yeah, it's been quite a break. Sorry about that. But I'm sure some of you are like, how did you come up with the name, like most people?
Mm.
And he came with the name Blue, and he's a blue healer. And I just thought that was a little too standard and wanted to change the name. And so I tried a bunch of different names.
A lot of different names. It was to the point where I was like, John, we can't call him New Dog anymore. Like, we gotta pick a name. It's time.
I was just calling him Hey.
I was calling him New Dog.
Yeah. And I think, how long did it take? Like 2 months?
Yeah. Like a month and a half or 2 months.
Yeah. And 6 is my lucky number and my favorite number, and also has been a number that's popped up in my life very frequently. So there's just been this kind of draw to that, and I said it, and he just zapped at me with his attention. And then I said it again, and he did the same thing, and that's kind of how it came to be.
Yeah, he just knew his name.
Yeah.
You didn't teach it to him or anything.
Yeah. So that's how that came to be. And he's doing pretty good. He has bitten people in the past, and he was a nutcase around water. I guess he went to 2 homes before getting to us, and somehow both of those homes had ponds, big ones, and he would see the water and swim, and then keep swimming and keep swimming and not come back. And I guess both those homes were like, we can't deal with this. It's too much. And he comes from a working line cattle ranch, working line cattle dog lineage from a working cattle ranch in Washington. And so he's definitely got some drives on things for sure.
Mm-hmm.
He can be your typical cattle dog energy, but he also just has this air about him. Even when you saw him, you were like, hey, John, you gotta look at this dog.
Mm-hmm.
And it had been 1.5 years since Juno passed away.
Yeah, we had just had a conversation about that, and you were saying that you weren't even sure you would ever have another dog because you didn't want to create it in a normal way. You wanted it to be organic.
Right. Yeah, I was just like, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see if something comes along. I think you asked me, you're like, are you even in that space?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, like I've had thoughts. Like maybe there's some openness in my heart to that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I asked you a couple of times after a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I don't know, maybe once or twice. And you, those other times, said, not really.
Yeah.
Not really thinking about it, not really open to it. Just,
Yeah.
focused on other things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then he showed up. I saw him, you saw him, and he came with somebody who was taking the workshop, and she had just rescued him because he was going to be put down. And so she rescued him and brought him to the workshop, and he was just in her car, and she would bring him out at the beginning of the day to potty him and let him out, and then 3 hours later after the workshop, let him out again to stretch his legs. And on the third day, I asked if I could handle him in the workshop.
Have him attached to you the whole 3 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you had Merlin too.
And that day was day 3, and the group was far enough along to where I brought Merlin out. And so there's quite a bit. I've heard lots of different people and trainers have different suggestions as to what they would do if they were going to pick a dog out. Like, a lot of them are like, just observe, no eyes, no touch, blah, blah, blah. And for me, I'm like, let me put some pressure on you. Mm-hmm. Let me see what's in there.
Mm-hmm.
And because I didn't want a giant project.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody doesn't want a giant project, it might be a good idea to put some pressure on the dog to see what is in there, what their response what their response is. And so he passed with flying colors, being attached to me, a stranger, surrounded by 10 or 11 dogs, 10, 11 people, and then a horse.
And usually when Merlin comes out, there's some reaction from the group, meaning the energy kind of goes back up.
Yeah, it's oscillating between harmony and then dogs being triggered.
Yeah.
Which is what we want. We're trying to help people, guide people through that experience.
And with the amount of like pressure you're talking about putting on and this and that, it's a healthy amount. It's not, you're not pushing them too much, and it's safe. Like, we wouldn't recommend that to someone who's got a dog like on a long line, or we have a way of doing it that's very safe.
It is a way, of course. You want to do it safely. If I was going to go to the pound or somewhere to adopt a dog or something like that,
mm-hmm.
you want to do it in a safe way.
Yeah.
But
you wanted to see what...
But you're like, it's just like horses. Like, you kind of poke around and you see, and like, where are you going to lose it?
Yeah.
What can you do? What can you not do? What are you capable of handling? What are you not capable of handling?
Mm-hmm. What do you feel like?
Yeah, what do you feel like? How hard do you hold on to feelings or your reactions in life?
Mm-hmm.
And I liked what I saw. I liked his baseline energy about him. If you're listening to this and you come and see him in person, you'll probably see what I'm talking about.
Or you maybe already know him.
Or you already have seen him and met him. But it's not that I'm expecting him to fill Juno's shoes, because that would just be massive. He's going to have his own flavor to it, but I have pretty high standards, and he's got a good foundation. So, obviously some things to work through.
Yeah.
I mean, the ball situation was a very large project that I worked on for the first year.
He had bitten people around balls too.
Yeah, high energy stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, so he's not perfect by any means.
Not yet.
But he's got a good foundation, which is kind of what drew me in. And he kind of energetically and kind of physically has some Juno vibes to him.
Yeah, some people that knew Juno, they see him for the first time and they comment about that and say, wow, he looks like Juno. He's like a cattle dog, more cattle dog version of Juno.
Right.
Yeah, he has some of that essence to him. So it's nice. After the workshop, we wanted to, and you wanted to feel him out a little bit more. And we had maybe 4 or 5 boarding dogs. It was a good mix. We had an old, like a senior dog. We had, I don't know, a playful one, a higher energy one, a lower energy one, etc. And Stitch. And we went into one of our pens, which is a fenced space connected to the barn. And we went in there and let him off on a long line. And he had freedom to make a choice of what he wanted to do. He could go party with one of the dogs. He could go mark a bunch of stuff. He could just stand by the person who brought him, etc. And he followed Stitch around, which was just, I think that was the last sign. I mean, Stitch pretty much ignored him.
Yeah, he was just
doing
milling around, doing
his own thing. But he could have done many, many things. And the fact that he found him and was like, I like that energy. I want to figure this out and figure you out a little more, feel you. That was a really good sign.
Yeah. So I handled him that day, and then that was it.
Yeah, he's now been to like 30 states with us, and he's done all the workshops the last year.
Yeah, he's done all the workshops. He's seen over 30 states. He's been to Canada. His life kind of exploded in that sense.
He came from a woman who was older, like what, around 70 maybe?
Yeah.
And kind of had
he was just inside, outside, and inside, and then out in the backyard, and he would chase deer off their property and just smash pine cones in their legs because he wanted them to throw them, and would chase the UPS person. But man, he did teach him how to like snuggle.
She did?
He snuggles hard.
Yeah, he snuggles hard.
And really, really enjoys affection, which is great.
She did a pretty good job with him.
Yeah, I mean, for him, for a cattle dog, a working line cattle dog, being with someone like that for 3.5 years, pretty darn good. I know he's bitten people, and he's got some prey drive and whatnot, but yeah, I'm very appreciative and just have so much gratitude and honor to have him.
He's good.
Be a part of my life in this intimate fashion. So.
But we're not here for that.
No. This podcast we will be covering the entirety of Oregon Tales and our experience.
The Oregon Tales pack.
The Oregon Tales pack, the business, how we used to handle dogs, techniques, methods, all of that stuff, as well as how we got to where we are today in terms of our handling, trials and tribulations,
the structure of the day,
the structure of our days,
how that changed,
how that morphed over the years and evolved, beginning to travel. So yeah, we're excited to just run through the last 16 years. Oregon Tales was founded in February of 2008 by my sister, and at that time, I was still living in Iowa at home with my parents, and I lost all my money in the stock market. well, not exactly a stock market, in the foreign exchange market, which is it's a big beast. It's a big beast of trading. But essentially, if you're not sure of what foreign exchange is, it's essentially just stocks, but you're trading currencies and the fluctuations in interest rates. And so I lost all my money in essentially the 2008 collapse, more or less. And then I left home kind of shortly after that to just kind of find myself after. And sorry, I'm looking at Stitch and he's fell asleep with his tongue out.
He had dinner already and he's down for a while.
He's down. He's awake, but he's not awake. So I was kind of in this just reset of my life and moved to Northern California to work on an organic farm and just learn organic farming. Actual organic farming, not marijuana farming, because a lot of people, when they say they work on a farm in Northern California, everyone just thinks it's marijuana, but this was actual food. And a really cool way of growing food called bio-intensive agriculture. Growing food in like really small spaces, but maximizing the yield. And anyways, it's really cool. So I did that for about 4 months. And I was broke. My parents were supporting me at that point. And I still had, I think, $70 left. And I took a Craigslist rideshare for like $25 to get to Portland to visit my sister with no plans. Like I couldn't do anything. I was good that I didn't have any money. And so I moved to Portland, or came here to visit. And I just started going out with her and her small pack, which was Oregon Tails. She started it at that time. And why she started it was her and her boyfriend lived in San Francisco and they had a dog walker because they both worked a lot. And when she moved up here, she was like, well, she didn't have a job. Her boyfriend was working at Nike. And she's like, well, I have to take my dogs out. Her dog and her boyfriend's dog. And so she's like, why don't I just start a business around this? And so I think my mom came out here. She would come out and visit for long periods of time. And they, along with her boyfriend, came up with like the Oregon Tails logo, which was the outline of the state of Oregon in green with a paw in the middle. And put up a website, and my mom baked cookies and put business cards in little
cute
baggies, and they would pass those out at like dog events around Portland or something. And this was back in 2008, so like dog walking and stuff was not that popular. It was it was a tenth of what it is now. And it was the Wild West up here. Not a lot of, like, so much open space and not a lot of people. And she didn't realize that yet, but she started at a local park, which is like a couple blocks away from their house in Northeast Portland. And there she met Juno and his people. And he was a puppy, so I think maybe he was like 6 months old, 7, 8 months old or something. And he was her first client. And so she would just go to the park and pick Juno up and go to the park, and then it grew and grew. And I think when I came on, she was, I don't remember exactly how many, but maybe like 5 dogs. So it's pretty small. Her two, and then another 3, 4, 5 dogs. And she would drive around in her Euro van and pick the dogs up and then take them out to places. And by the time I got up here, she had found some locations where she could go to take them and let them off leash and run around and play. Mm-hmm. And she didn't know anything about dogs as far as helping them overcome their fears and not get into scuffles or chase things. It was just kind of like when it was time to go, or they were getting too far away, there was kind of that whole like, okay, come over here, let's go this way. And you kind of try to trick them. Maybe you pick a stick up to get their attention and kind of bribe them to follow you, hopefully. And so I would go out with them and I would just throw sticks in the water for like an hour. They'd bring it out, I'd throw it. They'd bring it out and I'd throw it. Juno was just a madman. They would just run. It was just chaos. It was just dogs just running around doing what they want, when they want, with not a lot of structure and guidance. But it worked well enough. And
so she started Oregon Tales in 2008 and you came on in 2009.
Yeah, May of 2009. Yeah.
Cool.
And at that time I had a huge beard and long hair and like I just wear Carhartt overalls every day.
John 16 years ago.
Yeah, me 16 years ago. And so I'd go out with them and there was this desire to have more coherence because it was a little unnerving. Like you'd see somebody walking their dog and then all of the dogs would just charge that dog. Things like that would happen, or they would chase after a deer and there was no connection. And it was just very much dice rolling. And so I remember I was always like, at that time I was following Caesar and listening, watching videos, just trying to learn stuff. And I remember being in the back of the van and I was like, I'm going to try meditating every day with them back here just to see if that would help. Because I was searching for ways to just help our day be more coherent and harmonious and less of a dice roll. More connection with the dogs. And I don't really remember if that changed anything or not. I'm sure it did on some level.
I mean, we don't do it anymore, so.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, I guess, maybe just a personal thing. And so I did that for a while, and my sister I was staying with her and her boyfriend, this 2-bedroom apartment on Mississippi. She was paying for everything. I didn't have to pay rent, but I was helping her with the dogs, and she was paying for my food, and if we went to a movie, just my whole life, basically. And in a roundabout way, I was contacted by this woman who has this kind of boarding daycare operation about 45 minutes southeast of Portland. And she would drive into Portland and go to a place where I worked in the future, not at this time, at Widening Kenny. She would go and park there and pick up people's dogs as they went to work and showed up for their job. And then she would take them to her property, fenced, like maybe a 1/4 acre or something like that. And so I was contacted by her. She's like, hey, do you want to work for me for like 1 day a week? And so I would go out there on Wednesdays. She would pick me up and Jenny would take the dogs out by herself and I would go out there so I could make some money. And I remember that was kind of where I cut my teeth with observing and handling and managing 30 plus dogs of all different behavior types. I remember one day she was pretty loose. Like,
what was the structure of the facility? Because with Jenny, you were on public land, unfenced public land, off leash. What was this other situation like?
The situation is we would pull into her property, which had a fence or a gate, and then we'd drive, and then there was a fence, like maybe quarter acre or maybe a half acre, I don't remember, that was fenced. And it was maybe, I don't know, a quarter mile away from her house. And so she would drop me off and all the dogs in there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we would be from like 10 in the morning until like 3 in the afternoon.
Okay.
And we wouldn't go for walks or anything. That's where we were. It was just like your typical kind of daycare, you know? We had all kinds of dogs. I mean, she wouldn't take red zone dogs, but there were reactive dogs there. There were all sorts of stuff. Small dogs, giant dogs. I remember that was where I was down there by myself, didn't have anything to do, and so I would just play around. Tinker, just play around with the dogs. Sometimes I would throw like a toy, and then 2 dogs would get into it, and I was like, okay, can't do that. I was just very ignorant. And I remember one day being out there, and it's Oregon, so like from 10 until 3, that's 5 hours of being outside with no shelter. I think at one point she got like one of those stand-up tents because it was just dumping rain. But it was cold and wet, 5 hours. And I remember one day just walking the perimeter. Like, what am I going to do? I'm just going to walk the perimeter. And so I just started walking the perimeter, and then I looked behind me, and maybe like 1 or 2 dogs were following me. And I kept doing it. And I looked back, and like 90% of the dogs were just following me. Just walking around the perimeter of this place kind of with an intention. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And at that time I was, working on like I was just observing how they worked with energy as far as putting pressure on them and being able to have them, if they were whining, moving towards them and then they would stop. They were playing to moving towards them and they would stop or they would break or yield. So I was becoming just more aware of that energetic field that they were aware of and they sensed and they felt. And as I mentioned, I was dabbling in dog psychology and Cesar Millan and whatnot. And I remember this one day, this huge Great Dane showed up and she gave me a little rundown on it. And I guess it was being a little troublesome at home with some aggression around its human. And she just kind of mentioned that in passing. And she was like, okay, have a great day. And I was like, I didn't really think anything of it. And then I think he was doing something at some point. And I did the whole thing and kind of held my ground, stepped into his space, and he just slowly turned around and looked me up and down and then just started showing his teeth and growling at me. And at that point I was like, okay, I held my ground.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to wait there for a while. I didn't move. He didn't move. And so that was a little intense. But it registered. I was like, okay, like that has some value. That works to a degree. Even with a dog that big. And so put that in my back pocket. I was like, cool, okay. And then carried on. And I don't remember how long I was out there for. And I would go out there and I would stay at her house when her and her husband would go to the coast for the weekend or something. And she had like 30 boarding dogs or something like that. And so I got a lot of experience working with a pretty decent amount of dogs. Like 30 plus is a pretty good size to cut your teeth on.
Mm-hmm.
And again, of all different walks and breeds of life. And then at some point, I stopped going out there. And I forgot, I didn't even have a cell phone at that time. She bought me a phone so that she could schedule me each week.
And like call
me for stuff. So she bought me a phone. And then eventually she gave me one of their old vehicles so I could have a car so she didn't have to pick me up and I could drive out to her space. What a lovely woman. So generous. So I was out there for, maybe a year, a little less. And then I came back, and during that time, I was pretty vivacious with my energy and creativity, trying to help Ori and Tails grow. And Jenny my sister was not that way. She was a little more closed, kind of wanted to just do things differently, stick to one neighborhood and get dogs from one neighborhood. And I was like, well, why don't we just expand and offer in Southeast and blah, blah, blah.
So you were working at both at the same time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd work out there 1 or 2 days a week.
Okay.
And then on the weekends, if I was watching all the boarding dogs and whatnot. And so there was some conflict because every time I brought some new ideas that I had thought a lot about, Jenny, my sister, would just shoot them down. And I remember at one point, I was driving around with her and I had thought through some ideas and stuff and I shared that and she just shot them all down as she was. And at that point I was just like, this isn't fun. Like I knew she wanted to grow the business and expand. But any time I offered anything, she would just kind of poo-poo it. And I remember just being like, this doesn't feel good. It's not working. And I remember crying, driving around with her and just being like, if something doesn't change, then I'm just going to go back home. And pretty soon afterwards, she was just like, you take the business. I need to deal with some stuff and blah, 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 because she was going through whatever. And so I took over the business and I was pumped, to say the least.
You took over in 2010.
In 2010.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still didn't have a dog at this point.
And so now it's just you.
It's just me.
Out there with the pack.
It's just me out there with other people's dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And I just started accepting everyone, basically, all over the city. I didn't care what time I had to get up. I didn't care what time I got home. I was just, yes, let's just grow. Let's do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would pick dogs up anywhere between 7 in the morning until 9 in the morning. Take them out for an hour and a half, drop them off. And then I would go pick up another round of dogs and do the same thing. And at this point, I was a little better, so there was more connection. There was more structure throughout the day, but still not a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, still not a ton. There were still scuffles. There were still dogs running up on other dogs and barking at people and just rolling in fish and feces. And it was what it was.
Mm-hmm.
It was fun. And so there was still a desire to get better. But that will come. In the meantime, I wanted to grow the business, and I was making enough money to where I could go to CrossFit. So my sister and her boyfriend were going to CrossFit, and I did it a little bit and got hooked. And so I worked out a trade with the owner so that I'd take his dog out, one of his 2 dogs out, who did not like really other dogs. And I took out quite a few dogs that were antisocial, but they had fun, and it was safe for the most part. And at the gym, I met my best friend, current still, and I was like, hey, do you want to come work? Do you want to come take dogs out with me? And he was like, sure. And so he started joining me, and so the pack grew. We were all driving together. And so he would show up in Portland because he lived in the suburbs. He would drive in, I'd pick him up, and then we'd start our day.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that for a while. Sometimes we would change the business structure a decent amount, just looking for the most efficient way to do it. Sometimes we would start really early so we could see how that felt, or we would pick them all up together and then take them out. But there was a lot of troubleshooting, a lot of just observing how it felt, making driving route really efficient. And it was one day that we were driving around and in Southeast Portland, and there's a taco spot, Mexican spot. And I remember going in there to order food on our route, and I saw you in there. And I was like, whoa. She's beautiful, amazing energy, just really light, filled, radiating. And so I just observed you, but I wasn't in a good head or heart space at that point to ask you out. I wasn't elevated enough at that time.
I worked there.
Yeah, you worked there.
Yeah.
And
which is so funny to me because I'm like lunch rush, just not.
You're working.
You're
working.
In work mode. Yeah. I'm in work mode. Yeah.
And so I didn't say anything to you, and then maybe a month went by, and I was hoping you were still there, and so I went in, and there you were. And I think I asked you if you had a boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And you said maybe, or something like that. And I was like, what? What does that mean? And I asked for your number, or did I give you my number?
You asked for mine. I gave you my real number, which I remember writing it down and thinking, wow, I'm actually giving this stranger my real number.
Mm-hmm. And so I got your number and then called you. I don't think it was very soon after that. It was some time that went by.
Yeah, it was like a month or something.
I can't remember if I was nervous or not or something. But
busy,
yeah. But I called you.
Good thing I wasn't just waiting by the phone.
Yeah, I know, right? Good thing. Thinking I'm an asshole for not calling you. Yeah. And so I called you and we met up.
Well, I didn't have a car at this time. And I don't think I had a car for a couple of years after this.
Mm-hmm.
And
you just rode your bicycle around.
Yeah, I rode my bike everywhere.
Normal people in Portland back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great. But I remember feeling you out and thinking, oh, this is like a suburb guy, which I got half the energy right because your friend is from the suburbs. And I remember thinking, if he's from the suburbs, there's no way this is going to work because I'm not biking out there. I'm not taking the bus out there. This, proximity is kind of key.
Yeah.
And when we were talking about where to meet up, we realized that we lived
half a block.
Like we could see each other's place from our house pretty much.
It was fate.
It was
apparently.
It was great.
It was bizarre.
It was really nice.
And so we met up at this diner that was basically in my apartment complex. And I showed up with Juno, and I had gotten him a week before.
Yeah.
And what happened with Juno is he was a mess. I mean, he was a great dog, but let's just put it this way. I think I mentioned this in the other podcast when we talked about our personal dogs, but when my sister and I would drive around, we would sometimes play through different scenarios, and one of those scenarios was it's the apocalypse. Which pack member do you pick to be with you in the apocalypse? And I picked two. Finn, which was this pit mix, this brindle.
He was really cool.
Because he was just hardcore. And so he would get in fights, he would get in scuffles, he would eat everything. He got into his humans' cabinets and ate rat poison and pop brownies, and just, he was a crazy man, chasing killed cats, and I had a hard time keeping him in a cage because they kept him in a cage when they would go to work, and it was all mangled, and they had to get like a beef knuckle, like the size of my head, and freeze it and put it in there to keep him busy until I showed up to pick him up to take him out. And they were just having a kid, and so they were like, do you want him? And I sat with it for a while. It wasn't a quick thing. I sat with it for a few weeks because it was a big deal, big responsibility. And eventually I said yes. And so I showed up with him and was like, hey,
this is my new dog, I guess.
This is me, and this is my new dog, Juno. So.
Yeah. And I started in 2012.
Yeah, so we dated for a year. And then I had some karma I had to deal with. And so we broke up for a few months. Or we broke up, and then a few months later, I was like, hey, do you want to come work with, do you want to come take some dogs out? And you were like, sure.
Yeah, my whole community thought I was crazy. But I had worked with guide dogs growing up, and I was making burritos,
Well, you still kept that job for a while.
Yeah, I did. And
oh,
no, I didn't. I was unemployed.
That's right, when you started.
I was full-time at school, and I was in between jobs. And you pretty much offered me nothing for compensation at that point.
Like, I didn't make any money.
Yeah, exactly.
It was like we were just doing it for fun, basically.
Yeah. And yeah, it fit into my schedule, which it needed to with full-time in school. And yeah, I was like, a day with dogs, that sounds great. So yeah, I started in 2012.
And we, at that time, I think my sister had come back, and so she was taking some dogs out here and there as well, and she would pick you up, and you two would go to the west side of Hayden Island, which was this amazing, amazing spot until it became overrun with homeless people.
That was after we left, though.
Yeah.
Thankfully. Yeah, she was pretty much who I worked with solely. I didn't see you much.
You at all.
I didn't see your friend that much. Yeah, I spent a lot of time with her. She'd pick me up at my house because...
What was your experience when you started? Because I know I showed you minimal stuff.
He trained me for...
Quote unquote.
Yeah, for 3 days. And then said, yeah, you're good. And I was just out there with the dogs, and your sister kind of like a deer in headlights. I don't know what to do. I have no connection with these dogs. I don't even know their names. Yeah. So it was kind of just do the things that you were told to do and try to make it work.
Get the dogs home safe.
Get the dogs home safe and not smelling awful, and try to keep your head on straight and try to have a good time at the same time. Even it was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun. Even though there was an undercurrent of stress, I couldn't believe I got paid for that. I still can't really believe we make money doing what we do. Like it doesn't compute.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous, actually, being out in nature.
Yeah.
Just rain, sleet, snow, heat, and being able to look behind us and see all those amazing beings following us around. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, but at the time, actually, at the time, your sister would pick me up at my house, which was still about a block away from where,
Yeah, you moved like 4 blocks away from where we originally met. Yeah.
So it was very convenient for her. She would pick me up, and then I'd do the morning route with her. So we'd drive around and get dogs, go out, do the hour and a half of hiking. And then I think at that time, it was when your friend would drop the second group off with us.
Yeah, so he was just driving at that point. You all would stay on the beach on this island in this location.
It was an island you drove onto. So you drove onto it, and we would hike on a decent sized beach on a river so the dogs could swim and they could dig in the sand. And
it was glorious.
It was really nice.
No one knew about it, so it was just us out there for the most part.
Yeah. There might have been a time, I can't really remember at the beginning, when I would be picked up. We would do one pack hike, and then I'd be dropped off. I think that's actually how it was. I would be dropped off at the max. Your sister would go drop off those dogs, and I would take the max to school. I think that was how it was in the very beginning.
Right. And then we switched to my friend just driving.
Yeah.
And so he would pick up dogs, meet you there, drop them off with you, and then go pick up another bunch, and then pick up the bunch that you hiked and drop off the bunch that he had.
So I would do the morning route with your sister. So we would grab the first pack.
Okay.
We would drive around, get the 10 dogs, 12 dogs, go to the river, hike, and then eat lunch. And during lunch, we'd be dropped off that second pack.
Got it.
And then your friend would grab the pack we just hiked and go drop them off.
Got it. Yeah.
And then we would hike the second pack and then go drop them off at home.
Mm-hmm.
It was sweet.
Yeah. You all had it easy.
It was really nice.
He liked driving.
Yeah.
So.
But it was the way that we would hike is if anything was coming up or if we had issues or problems or struggles, we would just talk to you and you would come out for the day or two or whatever with the big group, quote unquote big group, and help us.
Yeah, like big group is in 10 dogs.
10 to 12 dogs.
Yeah.
And you would have like maybe a new dog that we're onboarding that you would be working with.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember in the beginning asking you to come out because we would park and then we'd have to walk them there on leash and then unleash them once we got to the river, which was more structure than it seems like there was when it started.
Yeah, I mean, when it started, we just would open the door and they would just run out. It was like the party started immediately. There was no leashes involved.
Yeah, so at least at this point, you have to leash them, take them to the river, and then unleash them. And that... I was coming from complete ignorance. Like the bottom of the barrel. Like, just dogs are dogs and they're going to run around and have fun. And so I was just, here we go. Yeah.
Open the door and that was that. So.
But that 10-minute walk to the river was awful. It was, and then it kind of set the mood for the whole day because you've got one dog that's just yanking on you to get there. And
it's also a beach.
Yeah, it's a beach.
We all know dogs like go bananas for water and beach.
Yeah.
Pretty much. So it was a lot.
Yeah.
To ask.
Yeah. It was, I mean, I think each we walked, I think I walked 5 or 6 dogs, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really hard.
Brutal.
That was brutal. And then you get to the river and you unhook them and you're just kind of pissed off.
Right.
Or at least at 1 or 2 of them because they're just,
they're so far gone.
They're so far gone. And then they're off leash.
Yeah.
And there's no long line. There's no nothing. And they're just, There was a lot of saying the dog's name and them not coming, or them wandering past a tree and you can't see them, and then you're just kind of waiting for them to pop up again.
Right. Or a bunch of them would get going chasing one of them.
Yeah.
One of the dogs would just get all the dogs triggered.
Yeah.
There was no way to get them back.
Yeah.
Down in energy or anything like that. Yeah.
I remember.
But it worked for the most part.
Yeah, it totally. Yeah. Like, most days were great.
It worked. Like, even though the walk was hard and this and that, there would be some scuffles here and there. A dog would run and bark, but like, there's nothing, no dogs got lost. No dogs got impaled on like trees or just weird stuff. Maybe a dog would get a puncture wound here and there. Like, it's just what people, I would say, is like just normal dog stuff. Dogs just being dogs. Oh, it happens. They get injured. They
don't come scuffles. When you call them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So these 2 dogs don't like each other.
Yeah.
I remember we would be hiking off leash because everyone got off leash. It was just everyone, no matter what, you're off leash. And I remember, let's say a dog would mess up. Like they'd growl at another dog or they would whatever. And I would just put them on leash.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'd be on leash for maybe the day or maybe 10 minutes or maybe 2 days. And then I would just let them back off leash again.
That was the way.
Yeah. It was kind of like a timeout, and that was it. No, how can I build in better recall or, help them overcome this behavior.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that went on for a while. And all through this, I'm trying to make the business as efficient as possible, grow it, and then at the same time learn how to do things better and evolve myself. And I'm here and there, I'm working with different people who find out what I do, and they're like, hey, can you help me with my dog? And so I'd help them. But at that time, we were using corrections and just more dog psychology stuff than anything. Kind of submitting dogs or grounding them, or however you want to call it. And we were seeing some benefit to it, especially me, because I was primarily the one doing it, and then I would come out and apply it to a dog that was giving you all trouble or something of that sort, and then giving you all tips here and there. But there was a feeling inside of me that I was like, this just doesn't feel that great. There was an element that just didn't feel that great about it. And it was working kind of, but then also not to the degree that I was looking for. And I remember working with this one person in Portland with their dog. And I was going over what I would do and what I was suggesting them to do. And they were just like, I don't think I want to do that. Doesn't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And the dog doesn't really feel good either, seemingly. And I remember leaving that session and just being like, there's got to be a different way. There's got to be more. And so that seed was planted in me at that point. And it wouldn't be for months and months later that, maybe even years later, actually, that we kind of grew into what it is today. But I remember that point pretty vividly, having that experience and that awareness of that moment was very visceral.
You were always, you were better. You were the best out of all of us, for like far better. You would come out and you would take a dog that I had been struggling with, and you would have them for maybe less than 5 minutes and they'd be right with you.
Yeah.
And I remember always having you to look up to, because I just saw that your skill and understanding was much greater than what I had.
Mm-hmm.
But I also I also remember talking about the challenges and you really caring about it.
Mm-hmm.
And really wanting us to have the best day that we could have.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that you could do it on your own, but I remember feeling from you a really big desire to help us get better. And like, how can you help us get better?
Yeah.
How can you help the dogs get better?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a big deal.
And like I said, you would bring out like the new dogs that were starting, and you'd work them you'd work one dog the whole pack day, and I could tell that you were problem solving and figuring it out and applying this and getting a lot of work done.
Yeah. If you don't know me, I'm always feeling, observing, reflecting, growing, and bettering, whether it's myself or some process or something, not in like a OCD way, but just in a life way.
Well, at this time too, when I came on, it was already happening, but after pack, the whole team would meet up unless someone was busy, and it was a 5-day week situation.
Yeah, we were going out 5 days a week. So me and my friend and Jenny, and sometimes you, every single day we would meet up after pack at this bar, and we would just run through the day and troubleshoot and run through ideas, shoot the shit, play cards. But a lot of it was very intentional in terms of how can we be better, what can we do differently, talking through the different scenarios that happened this day, this time, et cetera, with these dogs. And there was a lot of energy going into bettering the business, bettering our ability to communicate with the dogs. Even though it was running fine, there was just this undertone of it could be better.
Yeah.
It could be easier. It could be more enjoyable.
Yeah.
Because as Cole mentioned a minute ago, when you work with, depending on what kind of dogs you're working with, it could just be one, but when you're working with multiple dogs, the energy is so elevated. And if you don't have a good control over them, it can be moving. It can move you. And being able to maintain oneself, not being moved, but also communicating with the dogs is a very challenging skill to develop. And I did a pretty good job of that. I think I owe a lot of that to meditation and my upbringing of just being able to maintain self-awareness within moments that most people would get lost in their trigger, lost in frustration, lost in emotion. But I saw that people struggled with that. People I'd work with one-on-one or you all. And so there was just this constant desire to help that become not such a hurdle.
Yeah, I remember the pack day was very dependent on how I felt or how the person with the dog felt. If you didn't feel good, if you woke up on the wrong side of the bed, if your roommate was being a certain way, or if something in life wasn't going a certain way, or maybe it was going a really amazing way, all of that was so viscerally felt by the dogs, which is really great when you're having a great day, and it's awful when you're having a bad day.
Yeah. Or if you have to take, because we were working 5 days a week, and some of the dogs would come out 5 days a week.
Oh, yeah.
And so if you had a tough dog,
every single 5-day weeker, yep.
The other thing about Oregon is that Lewis and Clark, the adventurers, who traveled across the country, the first to do it, more arguably, they said that Oregon was the worst place that they visited.
Yeah, I think they did the winter here.
They got stuck here in the winter. And when they got back and gave their report, they were like, Oregon is horrible. Just to give you an idea. And those people this was like back in when? The 1800s?
Yeah, a long time ago.
They had to deal with like all sorts of trials and tribulations, and they were like, Oregon, not so good.
Yeah.
because the winters are so gnarly. So you have those external factors.
Yeah.
Mixed with our feelings, mixed with the dogs.
Yeah.
And if you had a challenging dog 5 days a week and there was an atmospheric river every single day, that's very challenging.
And like you said earlier, we were taking any dog.
Yeah.
It's not like we were picking the good ones. It was any dog.
Yeah. And so one of the ways that I wanted to help, or we came up with trying to better the situation, was being out longer with the dogs. And so instead of it being like an hour and a half, I think maybe we increased it to like an hour and 45 or 2 hours or something like that.
Mm.
And so maybe like time was a little better. And I remember working with dogs extracurricularly.
Oh, yeah.
Volunteering time, just calling the people up and just being like, hey, can I come by this weekend for free to work with your dog so that my week is better next week?
Yeah.
Things like that.
I had a hard puppy 5-day-a-weeker, and I would pick her up early because I needed something, some help.
Yeah, there was quite a bit of that. Just offering our time for free just to tinker and better that relationship so our days were more enjoyable.
You would also pull stuff. We would have these meetings and you would just take stuff away from us. You would say, no voice. You can't use your voice anymore. And it was like the world fell apart. In my head, I would just think, how am I going to communicate with so-and-so? What about this dog? What about that dog? For how long? You know, all these triggers come out.
Right.
Or you can't touch any of the dogs, or you can't use any leash.
Well, I remember doing those things, and it was trying to help elevate you all.
Yeah, you did.
Because I could use my voice, but then a lot of it was not my voice because I had more practice with that. And so it was all just trying to help elevate you all.
Well, you would take stuff away and then you wouldn't give us a deadline of it. And so, I'd go home and just work out the next day and how I was going to make this situation work. And we would get in a rhythm with not having our voice or not being able to use the leash or whatever. And then you'd give it back to us. And you'd be like, okay, now you can use your voice because you don't need it anymore. And so those things really went a long ways because it helped me realize that I didn't need a lot of things. And that I didn't have to rely on things. And it kind of opened me up to going about things in a different way.
A little more self-empowerment.
Yeah. I think at this time you also split up the pack.
Yeah.
So initially when I started, it was we would get to the river together, all the dogs would hike together. And you introduced a split pack. And this stuck for a long time. Broken up packs where you're assigned 5, 6 dogs, whatever, at this point. And we would hike to the river together, and then we would break apart and we'd hike separate, and then we would meet up maybe once or twice to let the dogs play together. And then we would hike out, but it was more structured. We wanted the dogs to be hiking with us and not just we get to the river and they're everywhere.
Yeah, build some more coherence and collection and rapport and relationship between one person and a solid 5 or 6 dogs each week on Tuesday and Thursday, and then Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, as well as like 5-day-a-week dogs.
But that was a big deal as well, because it was scary and it was very empowering because those dogs were my sole responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
If anything happened to them, it was all on me.
Mm-hmm.
Their growth was on me too. So if my pack was falling apart, it was because of me, not because of anyone else.
Mm-hmm. What is your biggest memory from that time?
I mean, that moment was a big moment.
Mm.
I remember crying a lot. I remember I've told this, John knows this story so well, but this 5-day-a-weeker that was coming out with me, she was a puppy. She was probably 8 or 9 months at this time, and she found something in her mouth and was doing the whole catch me if you can thing. And of course, we still don't have dogs on long lines or anything.
Well, a little caveat about that.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up with, I didn't know what a crate was or a cage was.
Yeah.
I didn't know what a long line was. I didn't know what any of those, I didn't even know really what those things existed. I never saw it I just never saw it. And so for some reason, it just never popped into my head.
Yeah, me neither.
Even though I know it existed back then, it just was not in my awareness.
We weren't using slip leads.
Yeah. We were using slip leads.
We were using flat collars.
Yeah.
Dogs slip out of flat collars.
Yeah.
There was a lot of that.
Yeah. So it's just more ignorance.
Yeah. I mean, I even had that moment and I left the moment and had no thought about using a different tool.
Well, yeah, finish your story.
She's running around. You know, at this point, they will do the catch me if you can thing. They know you want them, which makes them want to run around more and go crazy.
If I had to think about it, this just came to me. Back then, the dogs were smarter than us.
Totally. Totally.
Back then, they were smarter than us.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Not so much anymore.
Not.
But back then, they were totally...
They outsmarted us.
I feel like they saw our ignorance and they're like, geez, okay, I'm going to go easy on this person today. Or, yeah, sure, I'll come with you even though I know I don't have to.
But she's running around. I don't know, the other 4 or 5 are probably just watching the chaos, and I'm chasing her. I'm running around after her like a fool, which thank goodness we don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
I finally catch her and I pull the thing out of her mouth and it's a porcupine foot. And that shocks me. And I drop her collar and I drop the foot and she grabs the foot and goes again. And I think I just sat down and cried at that point because I'm like, what am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I need a minute to let this out before I go chase you again.
Right.
Because she's not running away. She's just running in circles around me.
Right.
Yeah, so that was a pretty vivid memory. But it was also very, very empowering.
Mm.
Very empowering, that work. I remember the first time I walked 10 dogs off leash and had some level of understanding. And it was it was a very powerful moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Like, we had a dog that would come and we'd click the leash and she'd run off and she'd jump into the river and she would just swim alongside us the whole time. The whole time. If we went to the left, she would turn and go follow us that way. And this way, she'd jump out, pee, and then run right back into the river.
She was swimming in the water for like as long as we were out there.
Yeah.
As long as we would let her. Yeah. She wouldn't swim away. She would just swim.
Like right along.
Just right along.
Yeah.
Yeah. She loved it.
Yeah.
And so during this time, one of the things a strong desire that I had was our own piece of property that we could, quote unquote, have more control over, because we would still encounter people with other dogs, and we had dogs that would run up on those dogs and get into fights and scuffles, and I would have to go to the vet, or homeless people would go number 2 and dogs would eat it or roll in it or who knows what. There'd be trash, all sorts of different stuff, dead fish. And so there was a desire to have a spot that was just ours. And that went on for quite a while. And at one point, there was this guy who was always trying to get me to go out and party with him in my apartment building. And I was too focused. I pretty much just would work and come home and think about work. Work out and then go home and think about work and just how to get better. And at one point I was like, fine, I'll go out. And so I went to this party with him and I met his previous boss. And I was talking with this person and they were like, what do you do? And I told them and told them we were looking for property. And she put me in contact with the people who own the land that we now call home. And I went out, met with them in person. The next day, we came out with the dogs and did a test day. And I think this was October 11th. Or no, October 31st of 2014. And we've been here ever since. And at that time, because this property is 22 miles north of Portland, we had to change the business. Instead of doing 2 packs a day, we just had to do 1 each. And so the packs got bigger. I started taking dogs out. And again, because to make it work, but we moved out here. But we gotta backtrack just a little bit. I left the business from 2000, I think somewhere around 2013 for a year. One of our pack members was coming out, their human worked in advertising. And I thought it was a really fascinating job, very influential, and one of the most well-known advertising agencies on the planet at the time. And I'd always pick their brain and they'd mention projects and ideas and then we'd talk about it. And then eventually after a while, they offered me a job. And I said yes. And so I left Oregon Tails taking dogs out and went and worked full-time there. And I managed Oregon Tails on the side. So if you all needed help, or I would still do the emails and all that stuff. But for the most part, I was going to a quote unquote 9 to 5, which was more like a 9 to 10 p.m., 11 p.m., 12 p.m. If you know that industry, it's pretty hardcore, the demands.
We were taking Juno out at that
point. And
point.
you would take him out, I think Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Tuesday and Thursday, he would come to the office with me. And it just, after a while, I realized that wasn't for me. Just keep it at that. And so, and one of the things was I was going to have to be traveling quite a bit. There was a big project where I would be traveling all over the world doing insight work. And I was like, I'm not going to leave Juno for that long. That was one of the contributing factors. I don't care how much they paid me. I was making a lot of money. And I was just like, no, thank you. And left there and went back to Oregon Tails full time. And then shortly after that, that's when we moved to the property. And around that time as well, a friend of mine went down to Burns, which is where they hold the wild mustangs when they catch them, to try to manage the population in southeastern Oregon. She went down for one and came back with two and didn't have time for it. And I was going for trail rides. I think I had been on trail rides with her for, I don't know, like 5 or 8 times or something. So very green when it comes to horses. And she was like, "Do you want Merlin, this horse?" And I was like, "Sure." And so I would drive down to, I think it was like 45 minutes south of Portland. And that's where he was. But then we moved to the property and moved him out here. And so it was a big time, that time for me, leaving that job, getting a new animal that I didn't really know a whole lot about. Wild animal. He was 7 years in the wild. And then the property. And so the property at that time, it was 1,000 acres, which is just insane. It's such a big piece of property. And when we did that, we added extra driving time. And it wasn't very feasible for us to be doing 2 packs a day. So each of us had our own individual packs that were larger.
Yeah, we combined them.
Yeah. And we also were able to spend more time out with the dogs because we didn't have to split them up. So we had, however long driving to pick up 10 dogs and then spending more time out with them, which was great because we not only made the shift to the property and all of that new energy, and we kind of traded a lot of different things, because we traded homeless people and all of that stuff for gunshots now, because there's hunting a lot of the year. And now we had like herds of deer. We also had cows on the property. And so we lost some things, but then also had to troubleshoot managing other things with the dogs. But the shift was really, really nice and really tangible. That I remember that. I also remember going from the sand of the island to the mud of the property. Because before, we would just towel the dogs off and all the sand would come off and they would go inside their house. But moving out here, it was a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
Like, the dogs would get absolutely trashed.
Filthy. Yeah. And you can't towel that off.
No. We tried for like a few days and then we're like, whoa, we gotta change something.
Yeah.
And so I built like a stand, and then we'd stop here and go, each of us would stop at the barn and hose the dogs off before taking them back into Portland to drop them off at home. And then it was also around this time that we shifted to catering the packs to different people. So I had all the really hardcore, kind of gnarly dogs. And the numbers were increasing as well. Kind of growing into this larger 1,000-acre property. But everyone would go around and pick up their catered packs and then come to the property and hike. What was do you remember what that shift was like for you, going from the island to the property and like changing the packs up and just that whole structure?
I mean, when we shifted to the property, I was hiking only a 5-day-a-week pack.
Mm-hmm.
Every single dog of mine was 5 days a week. And so it had a really beautiful ending because we got to a really solid place. That was really nice because I saw them every day. It was challenging getting there because of what we've mentioned about 5-day-weekers. But I loved that time. And that shifted, I think, as this catering to behavior started, because there was like one 5-day-a-weeker that was having some home stuff. And at the time that really affected the work. And he got to the point where I couldn't pick him up anymore because he was really nasty inside the house and he had to go into your pack.
Right.
And I remember that being challenging. But I did enjoy the kind of solitude of the day. I think I was really into the groove of it, with kind of us all doing our own thing and then running into each other now and then, and seeing everyone adventuring out there, and you turn a corner and then there's so-and-so, and then you kind of hang out with them for a minute, or maybe you hike for a little bit with someone.
Right. I remember the feeling just being, the property was so expansive.
Yeah.
Like even the island that we were on was large.
Yeah.
But we would all primarily stay on the beach.
Yeah.
And so we could like look down the beach a ways and see the other pack and stuff. But here, it was like you were out there on your own.
Yeah, it was all forested too, like those poplar planted trees. And so you could really get into your own little world with the dogs. How did it feel coming? Because you left advertising and then you went right back into pack. You had a full pack.
Yeah.
At that point. And you were accumulating the tough ones.
Yeah. Yeah, I would, if a dog was too challenging, I would take that on. It's funny because when I came back to the business, I was like a little nervous because I've just felt so unpracticed in moving through the day with that many dogs. And I remember being a little nervous, being a little intimidated, but it didn't last for very long, but I do remember that feeling. So we had these catered packs, and I would have the really challenging ones. And we'll just briefly go over some of the stories of some of these harder dogs. And mind you that 90% of the time, all was well. Everyone was just enjoying, getting along, having a blast. But for some reason, that 10% would always, it would move us, especially me. And for most people, I don't know how most people deal with it. But for us, it was just, how do we help this? I would run it back in my head. What did we miss? What did we miss? What did we miss? Because for me, I have preferences in life. Like maybe I don't prefer this or prefer that, but it's not this thing that moves me so much to where I need to be reactive towards it, or angry, or fearful, or something like that. And so when I saw these things happen in the pack, I was just like, you can have preferences, but like if you don't like that dog, that doesn't mean you just get to bully them all day, or bully them when you see them, or when they're right next to you, or you can have a preference that you really, really like to run around and play, but also have some calm in you.
Mm-hmm.
And the list goes on and on. It's like you can have preferences, have some tendencies, but be able to have harmony.
Mm-hmm.
And when there was a lack of harmony, I would always scratch my head as to what we could do differently, what we could do better. And so some of these dogs, I mean, I remember one dog that we took out. If you didn't ask him to do anything, he was fine. He was fine most of the time. But if you asked him to do something and he didn't want to do it, you were screwed. Like one day, I was out and I don't know what this dog was doing, but he was doing something and I asked him to stop. And he just turned around and looked at me and then just came after me and chased me. And this is a big 90-pound dog. Chased me into the water. I started swimming. He was still chasing me, swimming after me. I swam back and ran onto the beach, and he was still in hot pursuit. And thankfully, my friend, who was the one who normally handled him, he and this dog had a fairly decent relationship because he didn't really ask him to do a whole lot. And it was that dog psychology stuff where he just did not, he didn't do well with it. Mm-hmm. Like if you were trying to be alpha with him or have him submit or yield to you, not gonna happen. Mm-hmm. Not gonna happen. Nope. And so he chased me from land into the water and then back onto land, and thankfully my friend was there and was able to stop him. So that was one dog. Then there was this other dog, this blue-nosed pit. He was I guess it wasn't huge, maybe like 70 pounds, something like that. Not 90 pounds. Mm-hmm. But like still pretty decent, powerful dog. Jacked. And this dog was that dog I was just talking about, red zone. When the switch was gone, you were toast. And this dog was very similar to that, except this dog was very stealthy. And he would tolerate the dog psychology stuff and be fine. You can ask him to do this and ask him to do that. But when the energy got to a certain point, or the energy spiked really quickly, gone. Mm-hmm. And I remember hiking that dog, and we were out here on the property, and I think off in the distance, maybe you or somebody else like released their pack.
It was
they
me.
all ran. And that spike in energy triggered this dog, and he went and latched onto this other dog that I was walking. And at this point, I had practice, all sorts of practice working with gnarly dogs. And I put him in a chokehold immediately before he was able to thrash or anything like that. And I had this dog in this chokehold, but one of my arms was exposed and right in front of the dog who this dog was attached to. And this dog that he was attached to was holding it together. This dog was just kind of a jolly thing. Mm-hmm. And he was jolly afterward. It was fine.
Wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah. And this jolly dog, I think slowly, what seemed like really a long time, but it was probably pretty quick, realized what was happening and my arm, because everything happened so fast, my arm was like right in front of his mouth.
Mm.
Or maybe it was in his mouth or something like that. And he slowly started to realize what was happening and then started to clamp down on my arm. And
the other dog.
Yeah. And it was just like in slow motion.
Oh.
And this was on my birthday. I remember that, going to the hospital on my birthday after this situation. And I still have a couple scars from that situation, but. And then another dog we had, showed no signs of prey drive or anything like that whatsoever. With the horses running around, with deer that we saw, et cetera, no problem whatsoever. And this dog was, at this time we were working with e-collars, but we'll get into that here in a second. When I was hiking him off leash, so I was like, I had no worries. Seen prey, no issues, whatever. And so I was out on 1,000 acres, and this dog saw the cows, which I guess we hadn't seen before. Maybe we had. And he went after this cow. The cow was a decent ways away too. So I had time to like recall him, use the e-collar, et cetera, that he was responding to at a low level, et cetera. And he just kept going. Ran through the scaling of the shock collar, hit this cow's face and just attached himself to it. And then the cow started running off. The cows were running around, tossing this dog around in the air, thrashing its head around. And this happened for, a couple of minutes. And this dog was just locked on to this cow's face. And the cow's like screaming. Just a shitty situation. I'm running after him. I can't catch them because they're quick. Cows are pretty quick.
Yeah.
But I finally catch up to him, and I think maybe the dog realized and let go at some point. But those are some of the 10% of the time. What we mean by like 90% of the time everything is great, but sometimes that 10% can be pretty moving and pretty gnarly. And those are just some of the examples. We'll give a few more here in a little bit, but
I feel that moving out to the property was a pretty big culmination or a shift. There was a big shift that happened around that time because you had Merlin, and so you were starting to work in a new way or in a different way because you're a dog psychologist-esque.
Yeah.
And you're working with this huge animal that's feral.
Yeah.
And then we were starting to take on pretty nasty foster dogs. And so we were living with this in our home and having more time with that. The pack was bigger. So we're dealing with more dogs, more volume. The team is getting bigger. And I feel like all of these, and then you're also now back with the pack. So you have your hands in it. You're seeing us every day.
Right.
You've got your own crew of dogs that you're working with. And it feels like, I think it was a year after we got onto the property that you started creating the Jentle Method, like more seriously.
Yeah, so I was, long before I got Merlin, I was following Buck. Long before I even was really riding, I was following him just because there was just something about it. Like I watched the documentary, and then I think when it came out, and it stuck with me, and then the girl that I was dating at the time was into into horses, and so I pushed her to go to him, but then I started going, and I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't know any of the terms, the lingo, or anything of that sort, but there was just something there. I knew there was something there. Energetically, something. Spiritually, I don't know. And so when I got Merlin, I think I think things started clicking because he was way more dangerous than any of the dogs we were dealing with.
Mm.
Any of the dogs that I just mentioned, way more dangerous. And so I had to grow very quickly to learn to support him and just bring more harmony to our existence together. And you're right. I think that there was a big shift happening with the property, the business, with all the new dogs, foster dogs, Merlin, me being back and getting to observe everything. But I feel that one of the biggest things that I remember from back then is I was pretty good. 90% of the time, everything was great. Maybe even 95% of the time, it was great. But when I was walking with those dogs and kind of practicing more of that energy, dog psychology, and walking around confidently, etc., it's taxing. Because when you're walking on such a tight rope, and if you make a mistake, your energy's off, you flinch, you aren't aware of everything, then they're just right there ready to make you pay for that. And walking around with that kind of energy 5 days a week was pretty intense, and sometimes 7 if we were fostering dogs. And I think that also became more evident. And when I wasn't around and you all had to manage those dogs, you all were like, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. It's too intense. This isn't what I want in life.
Or we can't. Like I was saying, if you weren't there, the dog wouldn't go out because I couldn't get them.
Right.
Like it was.
Yeah. Or if I would left to go do something for 10 minutes, something would happen.
Yeah.
Because the dogs knew that you all were not up for the task.
Yeah. And it might not have been something that extreme that happens. It might be like a little scuffle, or a dog barks at a
little
growls at a dog that's too close to him, or corrects a puppy or something like that.
Yeah.
But as we've been mentioning through this whole process, you keep seeking more. And we're years into the business at this point. And so those big things feel really big.
Those small things feel really big.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the big things feel like atomic bombs.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't think it ever felt good to us when a dog would growl at another dog, or there'd be a little scuffle, or that was always oh, what's happening? Like, what are we missing? This isn't good.
Yeah. It was almost like when dogs acted like dogs in that way, and this is me looking back on it now, more recently coming up with this, but back then we were practicing more dog psychology, and we were getting dogs. We were creating a situation where we had just a bunch of dogs because we were treating them like dogs and allowing this behavior and corrections, and because we were correcting them. We were embodying what it is that they do amongst themselves. And so looking back, I'm like, oh, this makes sense, you know?
Yeah.
But So we're out at the property and things are just, they're expanded, they're growing, there's more intense dogs, and we're still looking for harmony and our days to be better and better and better and better and easier and easier and easier and full of more enjoyment. And about this time, because we're seeking this, we're trying new tools. One of those, or some of those things, were like prong collars and shock collars and food. And the shock collars, they made sense, but not in a large, not at scale.
Mm-hmm.
Although I did have thoughts about getting shock collars for all of them, or most of them, because most of them had something we could use a shock collar for.
Mm-hmm.
But it just wasn't feasible with 55 plus dogs,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And food wasn't really feasible either because of that many dogs and resource guarding and just allergies and
Overexcitement. The second you bring a treat out and that one dog is just going bananas.
I mean, there goes their whole day.
Exactly.
Because they're like, I know you have treats and I'm just going to be staring at you for the next 4 hours away while you hike and all the other dogs play, but I'm just going to be staring at you.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not what your humans are paying me for.
Yeah.
Like, they want you to run around and have fun. And so food didn't really work. But e-collars, or shock collars, they hung around the longest. But even within that, we were all still, and you're a very sensitive person, a very feeling person. And using those as well as doing some of the dog psychology stuff, it didn't feel good to you. I would say that you were one of the number one causes for us to shift away from that. Among other people, like that one-on-one session that I did that I mentioned. And so because you were like, this doesn't feel good, I can't do this. You had a limit.
Yeah, I couldn't.
And so I saw him like, okay, so Cole and so can't work with these dogs that I have because of who these dogs are.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, that just doesn't seem right. I'm like, we should be able to work with these dogs and get them to a place to where anyone can work with them. And not in this obedient way, because these dogs were obedient. They would listen, but then they wouldn't. In those moments. And I'm like, I don't care if it's just a growl or if it's a scuffle that lasts a second.
Or if they whine the whole way to the property.
Or if they whine to the whole way to the property. Yeah. Or whatever the case may be. We're like, we just wanted complete feeling of harmony. And you could work any of the dogs that we bring on. Anyone could work any of the dogs that we bring on. And so there was still this thing pinging. And so then I started just diving inward and doing some soul searching and doing a lot more intentional work around horsemanship. And obviously, because I had Merlin. And as I started to do that, I was like, well, what if we just start doing this with the dogs? And then it just kind of unfolded from there. And essentially, we just threw out everything we were doing, all the corrections, all the dog psychology, all of carrying around this kind of energy and blah, blah, blah. We just threw it all out and started from scratch.
Well, I left the business too around that time.
Yes, you did.
I think that may have been around then.
Yeah.
I think that you were really diving into Merlin because you wanted to ride him and be reliable with him.
Yep.
And I was hitting a boiling point with the pack.
Yep.
With, honestly, I feel like the dogs that were really hard for me were overexcited dogs.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that just needed more, and they would just come to pack and be on fire all day.
Right.
Those dogs were really, they were really hard for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I built my skills a lot over the years, but I couldn't work with certain dogs. I couldn't onboard certain dogs. Right. I had to show up with perfect energy. There were all these prerequisites to having a good time.
Mm-hmm.
And it just...
The dogs were still kicking our ass.
Yeah, I mean, the dogs were... you were in a good place with it.
Yeah.
Like, you were in a pretty good place. Another person was in a pretty good place. And I was kind of falling apart.
Right.
Like, it got to the point where it was like the only option was for me to step back.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the bigger catalysts where I was like, if like Cole's leaving the business and the industry because it's just too challenging to work with dogs in this way, this many dogs in this way.
Yeah, and for some reason, I couldn't just be with the easy dogs.
Mm-hmm.
That couldn't work for me. It was like I saw what was missing, and if that couldn't be fixed, then there's no place for me in this industry because because I was handicapped.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, there were not necessarily, handicapped, but also there's just a ceiling.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, I just will not ever be able to work with those kinds of dogs.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to handle them in this way.
Yeah.
And that didn't feel good to you.
No, it felt terrible.
Yeah, I remember that.
It was awful. It just... Yeah, I'm like, if you can't work with every dog, then what are you doing? Or what am I doing?
Right.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, so you left, and I really sank my teeth into natural horsemanship and just tinkering around with bringing that style to the dog world. And the cool thing about the pack is that it was 5 days a week for 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So I could work with a dog for many different dogs that we saw every single day for 4 hours, or twice a day, every other day for 4 hours. And see the change, because a lot of these dogs we had seen for years. We knew them very well. And so it was so cool to start doing these things, even though some of them were challenging, because fully removing corrections and physical contact and like that dog psychology, it took a while for that to go away, because our natural instinct was to do those things, right? To correct the dog, pop them here, blah, blah, blah. Be confrontational, apply psychological pressure, some kind of pressure to a dog, and then, just all that stuff. It took a while to dissolve all of those ways of reacting to dogs and guiding dogs. But
you're also testing out this new way and creating it.
Yeah, which was hard in and of itself because I had so much doubt. I had even people in my ear like shooting holes in it, like, dogs and horses aren't the same. This isn't going to work. What are you doing? Like, why are you changing the way you do things? Because you're successful. You can handle any dog. And I'm like, but that's me. I can. But like, look at Cole. Or look at so-and-so. Look at this person. What are they supposed to do with a challenging dog? And they're not going to they tried positive only, and they just don't have it in them to do this dog psychology, or they don't have it in them to light their dog up with a shock collar, you know? And regarding shock collars is because of that, I was like, okay, in this one of the phases we went through was, if we're going to use a shock collar, the only thing we can use is vibrate. And the reason for that is because we couldn't scale.
In the softening of our handling.
This is one of the phases in the softening of our handling and guiding dogs, is because you couldn't scale. It was just vibrate and that was it. And if it failed, then you just needed to do more work. And if a dog was really agitated by it vibrating, well, I'm like, okay, well, that's way too sensitive. If you're that moved by this weird thing on your neck vibrating, then I'm pretty sure you're going to be pretty moved by a lot of other things in life. And so we just help dogs overcome that. And we got them to a good place to where vibrate was all that we needed, which was really cool to see. But in natural horsemanship, they don't rely on tools. And so we also didn't want to rely on tools. We just wanted to be able to get it done with just a leash, just like they do in natural horsemanship, where they get it done with just a lead rope. And so I kept tinkering with it, so many late nights, working all day in the rain, going home, and then just staying up late and just processing and feeling and thinking through things, and then applying that the next day, and then tinkering. And it was a very long process and pretty effortless, but lots of energy spent doing it and delving into it. And then you came back. And I was like, I remember creating most of the Jentle Method, and you were not working with dogs, but you had Stitch.
And I took on a foster.
And you took on a foster dog that was attacking people. She was a pretty soft dog, but she had somebody burglarize their home, and she chased the burglar out. And after that day, she was then reactive to people.
Yeah.
And you used the Jentle Method and helped her through it. And you got real good at it, and it felt good to you. It was quote unquote easy. I don't want to speak. What was your experience with it?
That exact. I'm nodding my head over here like, yes, that's exactly it. It was really cool. I mean, all the pressure was off, and I just let it all go. I was like, that's not my thing anymore. But at the point when I left, you had started developing things. It was kind of this, you had started developing things, and then as I was gone, it really came together, and then I picked it up. We couldn't even do like training sessions together, you and I working together like that. And so I feel like I learned a lot of it from watching you with the pack before I left.
Why couldn't we?
Because of conflict. Because I was just so lost that any piece of guidance just felt like every piece of guidance I received turned into failure on my end.
Yeah, I remember. That was tough.
It was tough. So we totally took a break. I took a break from work, and we also took
a hard time.
It was a hard time. It was fine though. Like I was enjoying my other job, and Stitch was doing great.
Yeah,
and
but for like a couple, like it was testy.
Yeah.
Dang.
But so I took a break from the industry. I mean, I left the industry, and then I also was like, we're not talking dogs anymore. And so I picked up some of the Jentle Method movement before I left. And then you really got into it while I was gone. And so I think through watching you, I continued growing in it. And then I think we were able to start working together again. And it was absolutely magical.
Yeah.
It was like a rehabilitation. Like I had a rehabilitation experience. Yeah, it was really transformative. Because I had let it all go, and then I think I was gone for a year, and I came back into the pack, and you started me out with the easy dogs, the quote unquote, like the simple, easier pack with the dogs that don't have a lot of deep rooted behavior or maybe more challenging breed or age or whatever. And I remember kind of working from the ground up with it. And I remember being kind of delicate with how I came back in. And if it didn't feel good, I was going to step out or step down.
And you just blaze through them all. And you were able to start working the gnarly dogs that you wouldn't even touch before. Yeah. I just had a thought. I think that one of the things that makes it so potent is that because we're not using corrections or this dog psychology and stuff, we aren't, I mean, of course people can be triggered, but in my experience, the more time you spend in this, you're not acting on a trigger or acting on an emotion. You're just simply responding to the thing that's coming from the dog, and you're also guiding them in such a way that's not reactionary. There's a smoothness to it. It just softens. It softens the whole experience. And it's just less triggering. I stopped taking things personally. Yeah. And that was big. Right. That was big, to take things personally. Right. A dog's actions like that. And to have it shift into, oh, you're having a feeling. You're having your own feeling. And that has nothing to do with me. Right. And I will guide you through it, and we will get to the other side of it, and we'll both feel good. Yeah, and it's that response. But it's pretty hard to have that response when you're physically correcting a dog or even popping a dog. Like, just that response in and of itself is almost validating the conflict. Yeah. And the feelings that the dog is having. But we're not even mirroring what the dog's throwing at us. It's like we're a black hole and just dissolving it. But not even giving them anything back except for just asking them to do stuff. Not in a reactionary way. It makes the work more, it makes it softer too. I feel that we got too deep. We got to such a deeper place once there was that shift. Because you remove conflict, you can't do the easy thing out, which is a correction. You can't just, oh, the dog's pulling on me, correct. Oh, the dog's pulling on me, and now we're going to move in the gentle method until you feel better. Yeah. That's a longer process, potentially, and it's so much softer. Yeah, it's interesting because and I remember this vividly, is that we stopped doing all of that stuff, but we started working more. Yeah. Yeah. Like, now we look at corrections and certain dog psychology stuff, and we're just like, that's too easy. And that's why we were having to deal with the same stuff over and over again with varying degrees of time in between those.
And there's change and
and whatnot, but maybe the stuff would go away for a month or 2 months, 3 months, but then would rear its head again because it's still in there. And yeah, and so that's one of the elements where now we look at that stuff, what we were doing and what other people do now, and I'm like, that's just too easy for the dog.
Yeah.
Like just wait.
Yeah.
Just wait, because it'll come back out.
Yeah.
Because we have lots of experience with that. The other thing that I've already mentioned it, but I want to mention it again, I think, is the fact that we were able to see these dogs and know them so well before shifting to this new method. And we get to see dogs not just in about this time. We also made another shift, and because the traffic was getting really bad. And so even though we were spending 4 hours out with the dogs, our driving was like 3 hours. And so we're like, this is ridiculous. And so we made another shift, and that shift was to give more to the dogs rather than drive so much. We're like, this doesn't make sense. Why are we spending 3 hours driving when we could be giving them another 2 hours outside, running around, growing, learning? And so we shifted, and we instead of picking up from people's homes, we just had spots. One spot where the people would drop their dogs off. We would pick them up, take them to the ranch, and then drop them back off at that location. So our drive time went from like 2 hours to 25 minutes.
Yeah.
And so
like an hour all day.
Yeah, an hour total all day. And so we added another 2 hours to our day of work and time out with the dogs. And so the amount of time that we're spending out with them and the consistency in which we are seeing them, seeing what they come in with, or seeing their personality that they've had for a long time begin to shift was unbelievable to see.
It was one of those experiences where you're not aware in the moment. You're just doing the work, and all of a sudden you have awareness of what has happened.
I remember because it was 2 years. It took us 2 years to realize what happened, because and this stuff didn't happen all the time. I mean, some of the dogs were really challenging, and every single day they would show up and we had to manage them. But for the most part, it was just that 10%, maybe 15% of the time. But yeah, it took us 2 years when we had fully transitioned to just practicing the Jentle Method to realizing that we have no scuffles, no barking, no whining, no nothing.
All the dogs could be together.
All the dogs could be together. And we just didn't have a worry in the world. It just subtly just kind of, it was like we were in a, what is that saying? A boiling pot? A pot with the temperature, because if you're in the pot and the temperature keeps rising, you're not really aware of it. Anyways, I botched that.
I haven't heard that before. I think so I was mentioning earlier that John would put in these boundaries and you would say, oh, no voice, no this, no that. I think the last one you ever did was right around when I came back, and you said, we will not touch the dogs or correct the dogs.
Yep.
Ever. I will not see that out here ever again.
Yeah, no physical contact.
No physical corrections, no leash corrections, nothing of that sort.
Yeah.
No voice, that sound corrections.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you banned it from the business, and you were like, this is the path. The Jentle Method is your tool that you can use. And if you have questions, we work through it and we meet up, and we did a lot of learning.
Counseling.
Counseling. Yeah, we did a lot of learning within the pack, and then outside help from Jonathan. But I think that was your last one of those. And that's been the way ever since.
Yeah. It's been a remarkable run.
Yeah. And that was the start of that 2 years of.
Yep. Yeah, that was the beginning when we made that shift. And again, thinking about it now, there's just more clarity, because now it's like, if dogs mess up, they don't look at, the way I see it now is like, they don't look at me and they're just like, the juice is worth the squeeze. I'm going to make this choice because I'm just going to get a little correction. Mm-hmm. Maybe a big correction, but it's just for a split second. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's 2 corrections. Mm-hmm. I'll take that. Now it's like they mess up and they're like, whoa, this could be like my afternoon. Mm-hmm. John giving me his attention for the whole afternoon. Yeah. It's not painful.
No.
It's not impossible. But it's just energy. They have to expel energy and figure out.
And focus. And connect and feel better. And
yeah. And so the juice is no longer worth the squeeze.
Mm-hmm. We're also just so clear with what we want now, what we're looking for. And like,
but we're not, the other element to it is, again, we're not looking for dogs. We're very clear in what we want, and that is not a dog. We want a domesticated dog, a harmonious one. Well, 100% of the time. Obviously, when new dogs come in, we don't ask them for 100% because they're going to have feelings. So we just chip away at it. But if we were their guide and we are correcting them, why would they not correct other dogs? Mm-hmm. Because we're their role model. Well, you know what I mean? And so we were just reinforcing them to correct other dogs and kind of be nasty, because we would sometimes correct them and be nasty, So
I feel that we're all, in that way, you're not showing a dog how to be in their energetic state. If you correct a dog, that could shift their energy. But they could also just absorb that.
Or it could piss them off.
But I feel that a part of what shifted was that they would have a feeling, and then we'd show them a better place to feel. Mm-hmm. We'd show them a different way to feel about a thing, which is better in their body, more neutral, more observant, more peaceful, more harmonious. And so when we keep showing them this different place to be, and then you're saying there's this decision point where they're like, is it worth it? It's almost like that decision point is, I'll just go to that good place. Yeah. Instead of going into that animalistic place or that reactive place or that hyperactive place, I'll just go to the good place. Mm-hmm. Where I feel good and they feel good and the environment feels good. It's all good. Yeah. And that was also when we started implementing long lines, implementing protocol and a system of, they need to be on leash and then go on a long line and then be here and then be there, and have ticking all these boxes instead of having it be this, that dog seems good enough. It's just a puppy. Let him off.
Yeah, it's very systematic, and we have natural horsemanship to thank for that. Just the sequence that all these different things that they look for before they get in the saddle and they ask that new thing of that animal, just because it's dangerous. And so the equivalent for us is getting a dog off leash is the equivalent of putting a saddle and riding the horse. And so there's lots of boxes that we ask dogs to check, both behaviorally and energetically, before we let them off leash.
Mm-hmm.
And that also helped a lot. And every single dog, no matter who they are, what they are, starts at the same place.
Mm-hmm.
And then depending on how well they do and how hard they hold on to things will determine how quickly they move through,
mm-hmm.
or how slowly they move through. But it's always on their terms.
Mm-hmm.
We don't force dogs to skip steps, or we don't skip steps. Like, because if we skip steps, then that's going to come around and bite us in the ass when they're off leash.
Yep.
And so, yeah.
Something about corrections, or that time before, that was also hard for me, that I was just remembering, is that as much as you curate a pack, there is going to be variation in energy. And if you have to be big in your energy with the dog next to you, the more sensitive dog on your other side is going to feel that.
Yeah. And
they're going to maybe create more space or be a little more spooky, or
yep.
And it was this funky dynamic of, I got to be big here and softer here and medium here and then big over there, and then that one's feeling the big and they don't like it, but then this one needs it.
Yeah.
And that all went away.
Yeah.
With this work, and that brought a lot of peace to me to watch the dogs that are more sensitive feel
safe.
Yeah,
because you could be working a gnarly dog who needs that quote unquote type of energy, and you're just asking them to cross over or do ... of the Jentle Method. And meanwhile, the real sensitive dog that would normally be like, oh crap, this energy is really uncomfortable. What happened to the normal energy from this human that's been guiding me? They're just like, la 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 la. Yeah. And meanwhile, you're getting a lot of good work done with that challenging dog,
without having to shift in yourself at all.
Yeah, you're just
the same.
Yeah.
You're the same as you would be with the soft dog, as the hard dog, as the excited dog. That is, and then I feel that around this time is when we started hiking as one big pack. Because there was no longer this need for hard pack curation. Yeah. We could have them all be together all day, and it was great. Yeah,
so it was you and me, and for a little bit of that time, we had an intern out with us.
Yeah, she was lovely.
She was so lovely. But it was 2 people, and sometimes her, and then when she left, it was just you and me and 55 plus dogs.
We were also teaching her, so she was kind of like having another pack member.
Right.
Around.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the depth of connection that we were getting was making it so that we could hike a serious amount of dogs and be
fine.
Like at peace in ourselves.
Yeah. That chunk of time is pretty remarkable to think about and just feel and look back on those pictures and videos. It was unbelievable.
It was unbelievable.
Because that was right before COVID.
I think that was probably after the 2 years, maybe 3 years. I don't know. Time.
Yeah.
It's a nice chunk of time, though.
Yeah.
I think the piece that broke us with that was the washing and drying, though.
Yeah.
You have 2 people washing and drying 55 dogs.
Yeah, it wasn't the behavior anymore. It wasn't that was gone. The 10% was gone, so it was just 100%. It was just the physical demand of washing and drying that many dogs.
Yeah.
That was brutal.
That was
in
brutal.
and of itself. Yeah. And that's the other thing about the business and how it morphed, was because we would just towel dogs off and then put them in their home. And now at this point, we have way more dogs. We're washing them and drying them with a professional dryer that's pretty loud.
Mm-hmm.
And just, if you're a dog person, dogs don't like weird stuff like that. A lot of them don't.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them don't like water.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are just working with dogs in so many different ways. And having to get to a good place with all these different personality type dogs, all these different behaviors, in all of these different settings. Washing, drying, on a river, in the rain, in the heat, in the cold.
With wildlife, with contractors.
With
students that come and want to learn from us.
And that's the other thing, is that we would allow people, before we switched to this, before we had this 100%, we didn't want anyone to come and observe our work. Mm-hmm. Because we were always just walking this tightrope of energy. And if somebody's new energy came in and it was weird, then we were screwed. And it's so like no touch, no eyes, that whole dog psychology thing. It's because they're just walking a tightrope. Mm-hmm. But now you come, it's like, whatever. For the last 5 straight years, this year is the first year we haven't done it in a while, but we've opened the pack to people to come observe our day, how we move, how we work with this dog and this dog, et cetera, et cetera. And that's been really cool to see. And when people come, and nothing changes. Mm-hmm. Nothing changes. Maybe some little thing, maybe some dog who really likes new people. They're just a little hovery around them, like, hey, can you touch me, look at me. Right. And we have to shoo them away from that person a little bit. But the sensitive dogs, it's just not an issue.
Yeah.
That's something also that has been making the shift, and not having to walk that tightrope is also so cool to see and feel. Mm-hmm.
It was taking that edge off of having management or having
harmony.
No, the before feeling.
Oh, yeah.
The feeling of, is so-and-so laning next to so-and-so in the van because they don't like that, or
right.
Or this dog's too sensitive to walk with that dog, or just having that undercurrent of energy. When that went away, it was so blissful. Mm-hmm. It has been so blissful ever since.
No. But as I was mentioning, it's interesting because that went away, but we work dogs more now.
Yeah.
Like the other day, we've got this new dog who started, and I went through 2 shirts because I was sweating working with this dog. And I'm not running, but it was a little warmer than it usually has been. But then it would also be cold, so I had on maybe a little bit too many layers. But it's just, it's harder work to a degree. It's more engaging work, more feeling work, more interactive, more dynamic. But for us, the payoff is so worth it because we don't live with that feeling, that undercurrent of management. And like, that dog doesn't like that dog, or this, if the energy changes like this, or if this sound happens, or who knows what. If I'm having an off day, then I'm screwed. We just don't have any of that stuff anymore. But we give more to the dogs. We feel them more. No, it's kind of hard to describe, but I feel like we feel them more.
Yeah.
Like, we literally feel them more because of how we handle them now.
Yeah.
And I think that because we literally feel them more, we feel them more. We feel them more.
If
we
you
feel
get
them
it, you
differently.
get it.
Yeah, if you get it, you get it.
We also feel them on a more subtle level.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
So if they have subtle thoughts and feelings, we meet them instead of them having to have bigger feelings in order to be heard. We're there with the little ones.
And where lots of people begin their communication, we would have began communicating and feeling much longer before then. It's like where most dog trainers are handling dogs and their behaviors and their energy, we would have began communicating with the dog much sooner.
Much sooner.
And so what they're dealing with are thoughts and feelings that have more momentum.
Yes.
We just don't let those thoughts and feelings gain lots of momentum because we feel it so much more quickly.
And I feel that what's wonderful is that we've had that other experience.
Yes.
We have that for years of meeting the feeling a little bit later or a lot later.
Yeah, with thoughts and feelings that have a lot more momentum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then over time, backtracking.
And if you think
subtle.
about it, if thoughts and feelings have more energy behind them and more momentum behind them, we all know that it's harder to guide things that are going more quickly. And you can either stifle them, which, depending on how much momentum a thought and feeling has, or a sense or instinct has, it might need to be bigger. And that feeling is so important. Because a feeling and thought that has a 10 momentum, and we're looking for that to go to a 5, that's more challenging, taking a 10 to a 5 rather than a 5 to a 0 or a 3 to a 1. So I think that just that alone it was game changing. Just getting everything much sooner, catching everything, feeling everything so much sooner than we were.
This was like another point of a lot of things coming together, but it was that piece of meeting the feelings and expressions at a softer place. It was also the boxes that we were having the dogs check and really checking the dog out and really getting to know them before we give them more freedom. All of that structure that we put into place.
Yeah.
And then also how we were communicating and how that changed.
It was softer in itself.
Yeah. The form of communication moving into the Jentle Method also played a factor.
It's softer, but it's harder for them as well. One of the beautiful things that I love about this work is that if we're handling a hard dog, it's hard for us because it's challenging. It's not as easy as it used to be, as like pushing a button or correcting them a couple times, and then it's easy. But it didn't fix it. It didn't dissolve it. It would just rear its head eventually in the future. Now, if we're dealing with a challenging dog, it's hard for them. It's challenging for them, but it's also equally challenging for us because of what it entails to handle a dog like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not challenging like emotionally and like all of that stuff, but physically it's challenging for us.
It's a lot of work.
It's work for us.
Yeah.
And I like that there's more balance there. It's more equal. And that's why when we handle certain dogs, I'm like, okay, like this could take a while.
Mm-hmm.
Because this dog has really strong feelings, so I'm going to be working harder to help support them. I'm not toppling them, but because they hold on to things more strongly, it's just going to take more effort and time and patience on my end to help them through that.
Or they just have a lot of thoughts and feelings.
Yes.
And so it might not be they hold on to them hard, but they just have a lot of them. A
bazillion of them.
Yeah. And so we're meeting every single one of them.
So they don't catch momentum.
Yeah.
Get momentum. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a lot of work.
Yeah. But I like that it's not easy to a degree. There's ease in it because it's second nature to us now. But I like the fact that there is effort that is needed to be expelled on our end in support of that dog.
Yeah.
Rather than it just us whittling it down to pushing a button.
Right.
When this dog has 3.5 years of experiencing something.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Pushing a button or like medicating or
overpowering with food.
Yeah, or not letting them do certain things because...
And just putting them in a cage, yeah.
Yeah. Or,
ignoring them.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a requirement on our end as their guide.
Yeah.
I like that equality that it brings to the feelings and thoughts that the dog is having.
Yeah, we get in there with them.
Yeah.
But we're not in... We're
in our court.
We're in our court, and our court is very neutral.
Yep. But we are with them as long as they are feeling these feelings, we're with them.
Yep.
And when they no longer feel those feelings, then we leave them alone.
Well, yeah, then we're still with them because there's connection.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
I think part of the shift has changed how we onboard dogs.
Mm-hmm.
It's changed the volume of dogs we onboard. We onboard slower.
Yeah.
We take on fewer dogs. Yeah. And then we also take on different personalities, different needs.
Mm-hmm.
So we're more sensitive to what a dog needs.
Yes.
And how long it's potentially going to take to bring them to integrate them into the pack.
Mm-hmm.
And so we, as a part of like the system we've created, is having there be variety in what we're onboarding.
Mm-hmm.
So that we don't have two dog reactive dogs each attached to us.
Right.
It's more of a...
We're aware of the energy requirement. And so if we onboard a really challenging dog, then we can onboard like a medium dog and 2 easy dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that, instead of bringing on 3 challenging dogs.
Yeah.
Or 2 challenging dogs. It just depends, but we're just more aware of that. And then also because we work on this more feeling of a level, I feel, we don't skip steps, meaning we don't let dogs interact with the other dogs too soon before they are aware of the level of harmony that we like to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of letting dogs off like we used to, where it's like, oh, this is just a 6-month-old puppy that's really jolly, they're not going to cause any problems, we just let them off. Meanwhile, they're going over to this other dog that's a little short-tempered. And so that little puppy is going to get corrected by the other dog. And normal people, or they want to play with a dog.
Mm-hmm.
And they're playing with this dog that's like okay to play. But then the dog's like, I don't want to play anymore. And the puppy is a puppy and doesn't understand body language yet. And so then the dog is like, I don't want to play anymore. I don't want to play anymore. And then they're like, I don't want to play anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then the dog corrects the puppy. We just don't let that whole process happen. We teach the dog in a different way. We're like, you can play with that dog, but as soon as we see that they're done, we step in so that they don't have to act like a dog and correct that dog.
Mm-hmm. And that dog will be off leash when they're ready. Instead of, oh, it's just a puppy, they're fine, let them off, first day, second day, a couple weeks in. We're establishing our relationship first.
Yes.
And having that be number one.
Yes.
And then they get to go into the environment and then come back and go out.
We are number one. Everything else is secondary.
Yeah.
And then when everything is secondary, within that, they have built so much skill and awareness that even though they haven't interacted with another dog, they're aware. It's almost like we unlock their ability to be a dog just by helping them quiet their brain.
Mm-hmm.
And like all the instincts are in there.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me that when we first started practicing the Jentle Method, I remember doing it with some dogs. And because we were still bleeding over, we were doing Jentle Method and like obedience and dog psychology stuff. I remember when we started implementing the Jentle Method, and what I started seeing was like, we just started unlocking all of the stuff that the dog had known that they may just turn a deaf ear to.
Mm-hmm.
It was all there.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, their brain was just more quiet, or maybe they just trusted us more. I don't know what the case was, but then it just all was right there.
Mm-hmm.
It was very interesting to see like their recall just skyrocketed.
Yeah. You mean the dogs that we had out for years?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that we knew, like, I know you know how to sit.
Right.
I know you know how to heel.
Right.
Like those dogs where we said that, and we're like, well, they don't. In our opinion, dogs, if that dog knows something, then they'll do it. If they don't know something, then they don't know something. Dogs aren't spiteful. They're obviously, there's something different in the environment that is, or a feeling that's overshadowing their ability to know what recall is or know what ... is. If they know something, they'll do it. If they don't know it, then they won't do it. But yeah, we just started unlocking all the stuff they knew, and that was very interesting to see. Yeah. But bringing it back, we're number one.
Meaning our connection.
Yes.
Meaning that if a dog is in our care, they never lose connection to us.
Mm-hmm.
And we never lose connection to them.
Yeah.
So if they're smelling something, they're aware of us. If we're working with a dog, we're aware of them.
Yeah.
If they're playing, they're aware of us. If there's a gunshot, they're aware of us. There's never anything that will enter the environment that causes a dog that is off leash with us, so they're that far along, to forget about their connection to us. And if they do, then they won't be off leash.
Yeah.
They're not there yet.
Yeah.
But something that happened when we took this pressure off of the pack, so we weren't letting these puppies or okay dogs just kind of go, and then we would let other dogs teach them, or
maybe not necessarily teach them, but just pay the consequences of it.
Right.
Like an older dog getting stepped on by some younger dog or just new dog that's unaware.
Yeah.
Like we just removed all of that.
But it feel like that really elevated our relationship with the dogs that were not the new ones. The ones that have been out longer, the ones that we already have this relationship with, it brought it to an even deeper place and it brought their enjoyment to a higher place because they didn't have to worry about all that stuff they used to have to worry about.
Yeah, well, like when some new dog comes in hot, they're not like, oh, shoot, I'm going to have to deal with this dog and I'm going to have to get really big, even though I'm a pretty soft dog.
Mm-hmm.
Then we just removed all of it. It's like, you just get to be you. We'll handle all the work for you.
Yeah.
Your only responsibility with us and Oregon Tails is just to come and enjoy.
Yep.
That's it. That's it.
Yep.
Just come and enjoy. Leave the dog at the door.
Yep. Yeah, you're not going to be bullied. You're not going to be stepped on. You're not going to be misunderstood when you're done playing and then have to worry about that dog still coming at you.
Yeah.
Or
another way of thinking about it, like before a dog gets off leash, is like if you're if something in the environment's going to make you uncomfortable, it's going to be us.
Oh my God.
And this is just, to a degree, this is natural horsemanship. You do it in a healthy way because our service is off leash. So if we do this improperly, then we're going to have dogs running all over the place, running away. But the way I like to look at it is when dogs are off leash, we've gone through all of everything that most likely will be a trigger to them.
Mm-hmm.
And we have sought that out in them.
Mm-hmm.
And ironed that out with them. And we do that so much that we become this source of magic almost. Like imagine somebody guiding you through life and they're able to move through life with you. And anytime they saw a fear of yours, they were able to work with you until it was dissolved. I could get down with that.
Totally.
That's essentially what we do before dogs get off leash, because there's so many people that are like, oh, I want my dog to join Oregon Tails. It looks like so much fun. And we're like, okay, great. We vetted you and your dog's not red zone, so cool. Well, because maybe we don't have access to a red zone dog at the time energetically or time-wise. Or maybe it's an overly feral dog. Whatever the case may be, we accept your dog. And then we see how much fear they have inside. And we're like, okay, you're scared of the pooper scooper. You're scared of gunshots. Mm-hmm. You're scared
of the hose.
Of the hose. You don't like water. You don't like me accidentally stepping or knocking into your leg. Like there's all these...
John taking his hat off.
Who knows what? All these fears come out and just all this neurosis.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, well, we're going to work through all of that stuff before we let you off leash. And in the meantime, we have a beautiful place to do it. You know? But
yeah.
And so imagine going through that process and then coming out the other side and just being like, yeah, I'm cool. I feel good and you helped me. So what do you want me to do?
Yeah. Oh, you want me to recall? I can do that. That's easy.
That's easy peasy because of all this stuff that we've already worked through. Yeah. But before there was just so much unknown pressure that we were leaving in the relationship.
Yeah.
Or putting on to other dogs because letting them off leash too early, you know?
Yep.
And we just removed all of it. So it's been fascinating to observe and just really just feels good.
It's been a really really lovely experience to have so much time with these dogs and have
I don't think we went over that. What our day is now. So our day is Cole and I leave the ranch at 7:50 in the morning, and we get back home at about 6 p.m.
Yeah.
And we're out with the dogs from 9:30 until 4.
Yeah, depending.
Rain or shine.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this last night before doing this podcast. I think, was it last year or the year before? Was the 2 days that I got sick?
I think it was last year.
Last year. So since 2008, however many years that is, since I started, 2009, in the business, I missed 2 days being sick. And I think that maybe we canceled a total of 4 days. Maybe 2 of those was because of smoke from forest fires. And then the other 2 is due to it being over 100 degrees. And then maybe I still worked on this day, but it was an ice storm. And so our truck could handle a certain amount of dogs, but the vans couldn't.
I remember there was a time when we were running pack, and it was one of those Oregon snowstorms that hits at like noon. And we have vans.
Yeah, it's brutal.
And there are hills in Portland. Yeah. And we were dropping off at the houses. I remember like people were parking at the bottom of hills and walking up to drop a dog off, or you were like going and rescuing them and then finishing the route with them.
It was a mess.
Yeah.
A total mess. But yeah, I don't think you missed any. Maybe 1 day.
I think I've missed
or 2 days.
2 days.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. It's all the fresh air we get.
I mean, yeah.
But the day is spending time hiking with the dogs. So we still all hike together in one big group. Sometimes one of us might move slower, and so they drop behind for a minute, and then they meet up with the pack again.
Yeah, like the other day when I was working that new dog. Like sometimes I'd be behind you with the pack, sometimes I'd be in front of you with the pack working, but it just depends, yeah.
Yeah, or if I'm free playing the dogs and John needs to create space because of the dog he's working with, and he might go off and create a little bit of space and then holler at me and be like, come this way, I'm ready, or whatever. But we spend time hiking with them. We do a structured run with them. They free play. We have a river that we have access to that's on the property that has a beach. And so we spend time down there. They learn to swim.
Working on the dog's triggers of overexcitement with water.
Yep.
Which is pretty common. Yeah, teaching them how to swim. We take them in the canoe. We take them on the stand-up paddleboard. Yeah. We've got trails.
Yeah.
But Cole mentioned this structured run. I forgot to mention that for fun, back in 2016, 2017, we bought a side-by-side, which is a four-wheel drive, kind of miniature four-wheeler, you could say. Bigger than a four-wheeler, but anyways. That thing has been so much fun. It was a shit show to begin with, getting 55 plus dogs to learn how to run behind that thing. But it's enabled us to not only work with dogs in the normal ways that people do, but to work with them at speed. At speed for distance. And not just with a bicycle with like one dog, but we're talking 55 dogs running together at speed, 6 to 8 miles an hour. And that opened our eyes to how we can help dogs with their prey drive and overexcitement, because it's not a walk, it's not a trot. Well, it's a trot and a run. Yeah. It's a trot and a run. And being able to work with dogs in that capacity. Because when you work with horses, you work them at a walk, a trot, and a lope or a gallop. And this gave us access to that, which was so eye-opening, so hard. Mm-hmm. So hard. But it also has just been so much fun.
Yeah.
To use that.
Yeah. When people already have an established business and maybe they're a pack walker or they do off-leash, whatever, and they want to start integrating this way into their work, and I can tell that they kind of see a mountain ahead of them of how am I going to make the shift with all the dogs I already have. I think about the run for us because we had so many dogs and they all were onboarding on the run at the same time.
Yeah.
And we had lots of dogs on leash. We were working with many dogs.
Most of the pack went on leash.
Yeah, because some didn't want to run.
Yep.
Or some wanted to eat the tires.
Yep.
Or if we stopped, they would circle around the side-by-side, or they'd want to hide underneath it.
To barks, they would whine. Like we got the whole gambit of triggers.
Mm-hmm. Or they're moving at a higher pace and someone bumps into them.
Yep.
And they might react to that or spook at that. And then we work through that.
Yeah.
So I feel a lot of empathy for people that are in that situation.
Yeah, where they see what it is that we do and they're like, where do we begin? It just takes time and patience and a sequence of events and stuff, and being humble enough to go back to kind of square one. But
yeah, I think about the run.
Yeah.
Because that was a process.
That was brutal.
We used to, when we moved out to the property, we'd board dogs. We've boarded dogs pretty much the whole time Oregon Tails has existed.
Yeah, we just finished up boarding dogs for like 6 months straight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like our second day off. But we would come back from a pack day, and I remember this one time it was snowy. And we'd take the boarding dogs out to the 1,000 acres and we'd run on the 1,000 acres.
This was after a pack day.
Yeah. After
a 9:30 to 4. And they still loved it.
They loved it.
Like they wanted more. And this wasn't all of them. Like some of them were riding because they didn't want to. They were smoked. But the ones that did, I mean, that's also been eye-opening to see that some people work dogs for 15 minutes and then that's it. And we see dogs and how much they're capable of. Not all of them, of course, but like those like maybe 30-40% of dogs, maybe 50, and what they can do and want to do given the right circumstances and handling. It's just mind-blowing. Mm-hmm. And we ran them through the whole 1,000 acres that night.
That was so fun.
And it was dumping snow, and they were just going bananas.
They were loving it. We did that a handful of times where we'd go out there after pack.
Yeah.
We also, when dogs board with us, we still want to go camping and go experience life and go off site.
Now all the darn camping trips we've been on.
Yeah, so we've gone like many times horse camping with them.
Yeah.
Brought them to all over Oregon and Washington. A couple years ago, because we started spending some time on the road each year, we have two pack members that are I mean, they're all family, but these two have spent a lot of time with us.
Yeah.
And their human happened to be like 4 hours from us
They were in Kansas City and we were in Iowa.
They were having a family emergency.
Yeah.
And they reached out and said, do you know anyone in the area? And we said, we're in the area.
We're like, we're only 4 hours away. So we drove down and got them. Yeah.
And then they stayed with us for 2 weeks in the middle of Iowa.
Some of the pack members have been back to Iowa. Like we were here boarding them over Christmas and decided to go back to Iowa. And so we just took them with us.
Because their stay was long enough where they would.
Yeah.
Yeah. They would go home after.
Yeah.
Or we used to work Monday through Friday with the pack. And then we'd load up the truck Friday night, head to another part of Oregon with the boarding dogs, and then camp that weekend, drive back Sunday.
Yeah. Go back to work.
Quote unquote work.
Right. Also, to expand on the structure of where we're at now. So we work Tuesday and Thursday each week at from the 9:30 until 4 is when we're actively kind of out with the dogs. We use one van for all of the dogs, no cages, no nothing.
We've never done that.
I haven't ever used cages. But we'll either have I'll drive. I always drive. And Cole would have 1 or 2 dogs in her hand, the new dogs that are being started. So they're either in her hand or they're tethered if they can be away from us. And that's how we've always managed all of the dogs, whether they're feral, they're red zone, et cetera, et cetera. That level of guidance and intimacy when it comes to the guidance. We are the cage, more or less. We've always handled it that way.
I think that was a part of our ignorance. Starting out is we used flat collars and leashes. We didn't think that option existed.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Well, I knew that cages existed. I just thought they were for puppies.
Same. Well,
that was it. And I was like, oh, like, because I watched my sister's dog when she went to Thailand. She shipped her to Iowa, and I watched her, and she came in a cage because she was a puppy and she was transported. And I was like, oh, this makes sense. But outside of that, I was like, once they outgrow their cage, then it goes away, and like normal dogs are just dogs.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until we came out from under our rock that we realized that cages, like everyone uses cages and advocates for them. And we're like, oh, we did not know this. But it kind of was a blessing because we had to learn to do things in this way because we didn't have the ability to rely on that.
We also didn't use muzzles.
Yeah.
Which didn't really think about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no tools, really, except for the ones we mentioned, and then just worked our way through those. But let's pivot a little bit and just talk about some things that maybe a little bit harder to talk about. So we mentioned some of those dogs a couple dogs that we worked with, and it wasn't just aggression, but feral stuff as well. And girl that I dated when Cole and I were apart, she got a dog, this tiny dog, like 8 pounds.
Oh, I think she was like 4 pounds.
4 pounds. She was real small.
Yeah.
But like fast, real skittish. And she wanted this dog to join the pack. And at the time, I don't think we had everything in place at that point. I think we were almost there, but we're still figuring things out a little bit.
Yeah, I think this was before I left and came back.
Yeah, so we didn't have as much connection with the dogs as we do now, but in any event, I knew this dog was pretty tough, very skittish. And over the weekend, she had to go to work, and I got a phone call because the dog was staying at a friend's house, and it got out in Northeast Portland, and she was like, "Hey, can you go into Portland? I'm like in another state across the country. Can you go in town and help try to get this dog?" I was like, "Sure." And I kind of had a sixth sense at this time. I don't know if I still have that, but at this time I was pretty darn good at tracking dogs. I don't know how, but I got into Portland and I was able to get eyes on this dog on multiple different occasions, but not enough. Like I was never close enough and to recall this dog. And even if I did recall her, she didn't know recall. Like she was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I see her and then she's gone. And then maybe a minute or two later, I got a phone call, and it's my ex-girlfriend. She's like, can you call this number? Because they just ran over this dog, this pack member, and she's dead, and they have her. And so I called this person. They're like, "Hey, I'm really sorry. Like, I'm the one who ran over the dog and it just came out of nowhere." And anyways, so I walk over and pick this dog up, put him in the truck and bring him out to the property, and they're buried out here. But that experience, number one, that was my first experience with something like that. Being first on the scene to a dog being killed by something. So that was pretty different. Pretty moving. Especially because we had spent so much time with that dog for months. A couple months. But I guess one thing that we've come to realize is when we see dogs like that, because we feel them on such a different level than we used to, we just don't take risks. Like our awareness is so heightened now that when we see a dog like that, or we see a dog that most people would just maybe not really bat an eye about, or they let certain things slide, we don't let that slide.
Mm-hmm.
Not for fear, but just we've had experiences so where we've seen, oh, when ABC happens or a dog feels like ABCD, we know the concoction of things that could come out of that.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah. And another experience is a funny one, but also kind of not a funny one. But at one point, I don't exactly remember when, this is in like, I always have ideas of expanding the business and growing and whatnot. And I had this idea that was called the dog corral, where it would be a feeder program for our off-leash program. And so we'd pick up these dogs, and it was from one location, an agency, advertising agency here in Portland. And I went in, met all the people, met all the dogs, and we're like, sweet, good to go. Bought a van.
And the idea was...
It would just be in our fenced pen.
Yeah.
And then they would go out for leashed walks.
Yeah.
And it would be a way for us to kind of start to build some rapport with dogs. And then the ones that picked it up would feed into our off-leash program. So it was a win-win-win. It was great. Bought a van. And in this program, we did buy cages and filled the van with cages, because all of these dogs, it was just going to be a more of a lesser, more hands-off program, you could say, to a degree. Like, we had somebody more green running it, just because we had only accepted generally easy dogs.
Mm-hmm. And it's in a fenced...
It's in a fenced area.
And then on-leash walks.
Super mellow.
Yeah.
Like, the risk was very minimal.
And they're separated in the van, so they don't need to know any etiquette for...
transportation. Yeah. The skill of the person didn't need to be very high.
Yeah.
Or did it? So, this is the first day. And all the dogs are out there. I'm in the pen greeting them. The normal Oregon Trails pack members show up and they head out for their hike and doing their stuff. And I think at about lunchtime, I'm in the barn, and this new person is like, walks up to ask me a question, but they've failed to close the two doors behind them. And so one of these dog corral dogs gets out. Actually, like 5 of them get out. And 4 of them came back.
Yeah.
Thankfully. But one of them just didn't. And so I'm like, just go back. I'll track this dog. I'll get him. And it kept getting farther away and farther away and farther away. And it's running to the west, and there's a big dairy farm over there, and it just disappears into the dairy farm. And I'm like, oh, crap. So I go back and get the side-by-side and go searching for it. And I'm driving around for a while, then I'll see it off in the distance, and so I go over there, and then it disappears for a while, and then I'll see it off in the distance, and it goes away and disappears for a while. And I track it for maybe an hour. And by this time, it's about maybe 1 p.m. in the afternoon. And the dogs need to leave at 4 to be back at the agency at 5. And so I keep tracking it, and it keeps running away. And I can't really get close to it. And then it just disappears for like an hour and a half. And I'm like, what the heck? And so I'm driving all over the place, and we live on the river, and farther down past the dairy, there are these morages, which are basically these docks that lead down to the water's surface, where there's a bunch of homes on there. And so I'm like, screw it. I'll just walk down this thing, go check out this mortgage. And I walk down there, and I see a house with a door open, and I walk in, knock on the door, and I'm like, hey, have you seen this? Have you seen a dog running around? And I look to my left, and I see the dog, and it sees me, and it bolts through my legs,
oh man,
out the door, back up the dike, and then the chase is on again.
It's just the worst case scenario.
Yeah. And yes, it is.
Because the dog has no relationship with anyone, no relationship with the land.
Yeah.
It was
bad.
Yeah.
And so thankfully it starts running back to the barn, or in the direction of our property. And I'm tracking it, and then it disappears again. And this dog is like a Boston Terrier. So it's pretty small. but really fast. And so by this time it's like 3:30, so I have an hour and a half to get this dog back. Sorry, no, I have a half hour until the dogs need to leave to go into town. And I go to this person and I'm like, you gotta go into town. You gotta take all these other dogs into town because they have to be home.
Mm-hmm.
And you gotta tell this person to call me because their dog ain't coming back. And this with you.
Mm-hmm.
So she goes back and drops all the dogs off. After this, a while after, she's like, that was one of the hardest things she's ever had to do, is go back and drop dogs off and then deal with that person. Because I didn't have their phone number.
Yeah.
I didn't have any of their contacts. So I was like, you literally have to be the first person to talk to this person and tell them the news. And so they called me and I told them the situation. I'm like, your dog got out. I keep seeing it, but it keeps running away. And they're like, okay, cool. And I'm like, I'm still like level-headed about it because I'm like, I'm just level-headed. I'm just level-headed.
Did we drop your dogs off for you?
You dropped my dogs off for me. Correct. Okay. Yep. And I just stayed out there hunting for the dog with Juno. And so I keep seeing it. And then at one point, this is maybe like 6 p.m., I see it and it's in the barn. Because I'm driving by on the side by side. I see it in the barn. And I stop really slowly and I start walking up to the barn slowly. And then it turns around, sees me, and it bolts. And then it's off for the races again.
Oh my gosh.
And thankfully it's summertime to a degree. But it's pretty hot. Maybe it's like July or August. And this dog, I keep seeing it, keeps running away. Keep seeing it, keeps running away. And by this time, it's maybe like 8:30. And here in Oregon, the sun's still out until like 9:30 and 10. And so I think did the people come out the next day? They come out that night. Anyways, I think that his humans come out, and I'm like, come out to the property with your windows down, bring its bed, bring its food, drive around out here with the windows down so it gets the scent in the air, and hopefully you draw the dog to you. Do a bunch of circles around our property and then expand out to hopefully get the scent out and lure it back. So they come out and do that, and then nothing. And I haven't seen the dog. They didn't see it. Actually, no, they ended up seeing their own dog and trying to call it, and it didn't listen to them on 2 separate occasions. And then they're like, we're going to go into town. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'll call you with any updates or text you. And so I stay up all night until maybe 2 in, tracking this dog, seeing it occasionally. And at one point I let Juno out and was like, go get it. go do something.
You know what we're doing.
He knew what we were doing. So he ran after it, but the dog just took off, and I was like, leave it. Failed. And so I think at 2 a.m. I just was like, I need some sleep. So I slept, and for maybe 2 hours until the sun came up, because it comes up here really early. And then I start searching again, but there's nothing. And then at about 9 a.m. I see it, and I've expanded my zone drastically. And I see it from afar, and it's running away, farther away. And I'm just like, oh crap. By the time I get over it, it's gone. And these people ended up hiring some search and rescue, somebody with dogs that like track people and avalanches and blah, blah, blah. So they come out and they can't find the dog. And it wasn't until about like 7 or 8 p.m. that night that I get a phone call from a guy down the dike, down the road from us, like a neighbor. And they're like, hey, are you missing a dog? And I'm like, yes. By this time, the whole neighborhood knows.
Right.
Because I've been knocking on doors and blah, blah, blah. And I go
and
over.
We've run a whole nother pack day.
We've ran a whole nother pack day, yeah. And it's a hot day. And yeah. And so I go over there and the dog's just like sitting there. And I just walk up to it and pick it up. Because by that time...
Was it with the person, like inside?
Just outside.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it wasn't. The dog was just sitting in his zone and the person was far away from it. But he was like, I have eyes on the dog, come and get it. And so I was able to just walk up and pick the dog up because at that point it was just exhausted.
Right.
So that was the first and the last day of that service.
We were not meant to do that.
We were not meant to go that route, apparently. And so, yeah, so there's been so many dogs, and those people and that person specifically was like very adamant about them wanting their dog to join our off-leash program. And after that, I'm just like, what are you thinking? Like, your dog has 0 skills and you want to put all that pressure on us?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what? I don't understand. Did you not know that your dog has this in them? Like, what's the case? And like now over time, we realize that a lot of people, maybe most people, don't exactly know what's going on inside their dog. But they're willing to have other people figure that out, take the risk, which is fine. But
that's our service.
That is our service. But now we realize that there's just a lot more due diligence that goes into these dogs and a lot more protocols that are in place because of so many different stories that have taken place, situations that have taken place.
Well, you say in the workshop, because we have people attend the workshop and they don't get it. They don't understand why they have to look at this. They don't understand why all these little details matter. And it's because we have had so many experiences in all of the different ways and expressions that a dog can have. And from each one, we've learned from them and created protocol.
Right.
And a path so that that doesn't happen again, or so that that behavior can find its way out of the dog and not linger and be a liability for us or for someone else.
Or just like linger in the relationship. Or to where you just have to deal with it ever so often.
Yeah.
You know, just have it be gone.
Yeah.
So you can move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
If there is a next thing. But yeah, it's tough. Another story was when we were kind of phasing out e-collars, there was a pack member that left, and they were gone for maybe like over a year. But we got a phone call from their humans, and they were like, hey, we moved out to the country, and we wanted some help with the e-collar with our dog because they're going into our neighbor's property and killing their chickens. And I was like, we don't do that. And I gave them some tips on how I would go. Like, keep your eyes on the dog, work with them off the chickens, and like do all of this stuff. And they were just a little more hands off, I guess. A little more loose, you could say. Didn't exactly I don't think they took the advice. But anyways, I found out later that their neighbors had called them and were like, come pick your dog up. It's dead. We killed it. Because it kept going over there and killing their chickens, and so they just shot it. And for me, after hearing that, and this dog was special. I mean, all dogs are special, but upon hearing that, I just, for some reason, I started looking at shock collars and e-collars a little differently. We had already started looking at them differently, but for me, that experience, I guess, just highlighted the steps that could be skipped in guiding a dog through different situations that give people a false sense of security and the potential repercussions of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so for us now, it's just, there's no shortcuts.
Mm-hmm.
We do not provide any shortcuts for people. You have to do the work. There's no shortcut.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess if people want shortcuts, then there's plenty of trainers for that, thankfully, because some people really like shortcuts. They don't have time for their dog. They don't want to put in time. ... The list goes on and on. But just for us, it's just, if you want something, you have to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And if you don't, then you get to live with those consequences. And some of those consequences can be pretty rough.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that was a good move. That felt.
It was hard.
It was hard.
It was really hard because people coming to us for help and us taking that stance was so not the industry.
Yeah.
And so not the easy, it's just so not the way.
Well, we have skill in e-collar or in shock collar training.
Yes.
And so if someone that we know comes to us and says, hey, I want my dog to be better off leash with me, can you help me e-collar train them? And we have the skill set right now, and we say no.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to be a part of their path in that shortcut. It's very counterintuitive.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was hard over the years to be like, no. But we point people in the direction of other people other trainers that will help them, you know. Yeah. But yeah, that was not an easy process. I have to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And if you don't, then you get to live with those consequences. And some of those consequences can be pretty rough.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that was a good move. That felt.
It was hard.
It was hard.
It was really hard because people coming to us for help and us taking that stance was so not the industry.
Yeah.
And so not the easy, it's just so not the way.
Well, we have skill in e-collar or in shock collar training. Yes. And so if someone that we know comes to us and says, hey, I want my dog to be better off leash with me, can you help me e-collar train them? And we have the skill set right now, and we say no.
Yeah.
because we don't want to be a part of their path in that shortcut. It's very counterintuitive.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was hard over the years to be like, no. But we point people in the direction of other people other trainers that will help them, you know. Yeah. But yeah, that was not an easy process at all. Because I think most people get into this industry because they want to help. They want to help dogs. They want to help people. And I feel that, I guess it's just to what degree.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to help people that want to help their dogs get to the fullest place.
Mm-hmm.
That's what fills our cup up. Just like the pack.
Mm-hmm.
We want it 100%, not 90, not 80. We want 100%. So I also forgot that I ran over a dog on one of my drop-offs. Some lady let her dogs, she thought it was fun and just letting her dogs be dogs to run and chase rats and squirrels. And so when she would take them for walks, if she saw a rat or a squirrel, she would just let them off leash and go and chase it.
What?
Yeah. And so I'm dropping off dogs.
Is this a pack member?
No. This is just some stranger in Southeast Portland. But I'm going to drop a dog off, and I'm driving along, and I hear this boom, boom. And I look in my rear view, and it's this dog just tumbling down the road.
Oh.
And I stop, and I get out, and it gets up and shakes off and just trots over to the human. I go over, and I'm like, oh, shit, I'm so sorry, and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, oh, it's my bad. I let him off leash to go and chase this big rat that we just saw. But anyways, the dog was fine.
That's so weird.
But yeah, it was bizarre.
I have never heard that story.
It was bizarre. And thankfully it was just a cargo van with no weight in the back, because that's why it survived. It was a pretty light vehicle. But yeah, I mean, people just do things in life that are strange, and they want things in life that are strange. Like that woman's like, I want freedom. Go chase this, go kill this thing. And these other people and their dog got ran over by a car, but it's fine. These other people are like, I don't want my dog to kill chickens, so teach me. And they go and learn some stuff, and their dog gets killed. Mm-hmm. Life is just pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very interesting. But anyways, yeah, we pay attention to a lot of different things, a lot of details, because we've had a lot of experience. And generally speaking, we've always moved in the direction of harmony. Mm-hmm. And if something leads us not to harmony frequently enough with a vast amount of different dogs and behaviors and psychological types and whatnot, then we just toss it out and try something else. And we've just found that paying attention to all of these different things and helps the vast majority. Mm-hmm. So to end, let's end with end stories of dogs on a little higher note, though. So there's this one dog that joined the pack, and he was a retired coon hunting hound, and I think mountain lion hunting hound. Yeah. And he was retired, just this jolly, dopey fellow.
He was so funny.
We've had so many just goofy, funny, jolly dogs over the years. It's been such a joy to see and meet and spend so much time with such a vast amount of beings.
Yeah.
Like, they're all so special.
Yeah.
But this one dog, he came out, retired hunting dog. I don't remember how old he was. Maybe like 8, 9.
Yeah.
8, 9, 10, something like that. But we're running along with the side by side, then the pack. And I think he had kind of started. He wasn't that far along into joining. But
this was before the Jentle Method.
Yeah.
To caveat.
Yeah. But we were shifting away from e-collars.
Mm-hmm.
And we still didn't quite have a sequence of events yet. But anyways, we're running along with the side by side, and just all of a sudden he just peels off and disappears into these bushes. So we stop, and I like go over there, and then he starts howling, and he's looking up, and there's like he had treed like 4 raccoons that were standing up in the bush, or up on this tree, like looking at me like, can you like get this guy out of here? And I think that happened at least twice. But he came off of it and was like, oh, well, my job is done. He felt all good about his execution, and we carried on our way. But we've had such a variety of dogs. We've also had dogs that would go out over the weekend and bird hunt with their human, and then join pack on Monday. And we live on like a bird hunting mecca.
Yeah.
And so there'd be gunshots going off, this and that. And
birds.
They learn how
birds
to
everywhere
how
out
to
here.
leave it. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a dog that would hunt on this property
and
then come out on the same property.
Yeah.
And leave it.
Yeah.
And not look twice at any of the
Yeah, and we don't. And both of the humans used e-collars, and we didn't.
Yeah.
They needed them for their dogs, and we didn't. The other fascinating thing about the pack also in that process that we forgot to mention is what we would be asking would be for dogs to leave their stuff, go home, most likely unwind all of the stuff that we were asking them to learn, and then come back and remember it the next day.
Yeah.
What we were asking them to do is what most people would be like, that's absurd because you're putting in this time to teach them these skills and then they're just going home. What about their humans? Aren't they doing the work and all this stuff? And we're like, at some point, we didn't hold any of the humans accountable.
Yeah.
At this point, we don't care if the humans do any work.
Yeah.
We don't care. All we care about is our relationship with the dog and the associations that we create with them. If their humans want guidance, great, we'll help them. But we don't ask anything of our pack members' humans. Yeah. They could be doing the complete opposite, but we're so consistent and diligent with what it is that we ask of the dogs and so persistent that they learn that with them, when they are here, this is how they can act and function. But when they go home, they can do the opposite if they want.
I mean, not even that they're here, just that they're with us.
Yes.
Because
yes.
That dog, and we have another dog that also has inadvertently killed things with its human on this property.
Yes.
And then shows up the next day to pack.
Yeah.
And it's the same environment. So it's the relationship with us.
Correct.
Yeah.
But that was pretty interesting over the years because even still today, people are like, they ask us, well, what about the people?
Yeah.
Like, what about what do you do about people, like the dogs, humans not doing the work?
Yeah.
I'm like, we don't care. We don't even ask them to do anything. We don't go into their court. If they ask us for guidance, then we give them some. But then they need to go and do the work. And if they don't do the work, we don't really care.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't want to do the work, don't do it. If you want to do it, then you're going to do it.
Yeah.
For us, we just have realized with the Orientals pack that it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The people don't have to do the work. If you're doing your job correctly, if we're doing our job correctly, then the dog will learn the skill.
Yeah.
Even if they learn the opposite of that skill in some other location with some other person.
Yeah.
It's possible. So that was eye-opening. And also another release.
Mm-hmm.
Because then we weren't having to strong arm people or shame people for not doing the work or point the finger at them for making our job harder. It was just like, that didn't feel good to us or them. Yeah. And so we were like, screw it. Let's just make sure that our job is so good. The job that we do is so good that it doesn't matter what goes on at home.
Yeah. I mean, that's to the point of we don't care if the dogs even get out.
Yeah.
Yep. When they're not with us.
Yep.
We don't, they could do nothing all weekend and show up on Tuesday, and we might see that they're a little extra, but that's about it. And
or if they are, whatever.
Yeah, and then we'll work with them and bring them back, and they remember.
Or if the person's going through a divorce, or there's a breakup, or they get attacked at a dog park over the weekend, it's like, okay, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, that doesn't mean that we're in ignorance or that we don't pay attention.
Right.
To the dog. Oh, we'll take note and then watch the dog, just like we watch them every single day, no matter if we hear about an incident at home or not.
Yeah, we know what they feel like. We know, because it's through feeling, it's like we'll sense and feel if a dog's off, and then when we put them on leash, we'll feel it even more.
Yeah.
And so we just work with them until they feel normal, and then we're like, oh, there you go.
Yeah.
But we don't even have to know what happened. We can just see that they're off.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you can't, this is another thing that we've learned over the years, you can't rely on the person telling you everything that's happened, because sometimes they'll come out with pack for days, and then we'll hear, a week and a half ago, this horrific thing happened. Yeah. And if we weren't paying attention to them without having information, that is a liability.
Yep.
And it just doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
But anyways, I wanted to kind of express some more of these different kinds of dogs that we've had come out with us. We're mentioning the hunting dogs. We've also had puppies pretty much immediately when they can get socialized. Mm-hmm. They'll start with the pack right after their shots.
Yeah.
Then we've had dogs at that age start. They do a semi-modified day because it's a long day. But we have dogs that age start, and then we have some of them that start that young and they go up until retirement. Mm-hmm. They go their whole life in the pack.
Yeah.
And then the humans might get another dog, and then we'll do a second generation with the people. So as like a side note, the community and the sense of family that is felt with the dogs deeply because of all the time we've spent with them, as well as the people that have been in our lives for so many years. And some of them are close friends of ours now.
Yeah. They're like family.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that we're able to leave for 5 to 6 months every year for the last 5 years, 6 years, that's incredible. And to come back and for them to just be like, when did we start?
Yeah.
Like the level of flexibility and support for us has been, it just has filled us with so much gratitude and appreciation for them.
Yeah.
And the dogs as well. Because when we start, it's like we never left.
Yeah.
It takes 6 months off, and it's just as easy as when we left.
Yeah.
Which is
and the devotion that the people have to their dogs is
getting them to us,
taking the time off, being flexible, the commitment of it. Yeah. We do have a community within the pack that are into bettering their relationship with their dog.
Yeah, because maybe they have a tough dog, or maybe they're just into the Jentle Method and working with their dog in that way.
And they want to just have a better relationship with them, or they see what we're doing with their dog and they want to learn.
They want to unlock the work.
Yeah.
In their relationship.
And have that kind of relationship. It's really special that we get to spend time with those people and that they allow us precious time of their dogs to spend with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really special that we get so much of the dog's time.
Yeah. It's such a short lifespan.
And just to watch them grow through what they came with and see them on the other side of it, and then be able to spend years with them on the other side of it.
Yeah.
Where they get to come and enjoy, and they get to build friendships with other dogs and like run and have space. And we had a dog that started years ago, and he was older and he was pretty reactive to dogs.
How old was he? 10?
I think he was 10. Maybe he might have been 9. But
he was like 8 pounds.
Yeah, he was
a tiny little black and white Chihuahua mix.
Yeah. And the humans knew that he was dog reactive, and they just wanted him to have a better life, even though he was older. And which is special, because sometimes when dogs get older, people kind of just let them be who they are, and they wanted more. And once we onboarded him and worked through the stuff, he had so much fun.
He was so jolly.
He was so joyful.
He loved the run more than any other dog.
He loved he was this tiny old dog, and he was like up at the front, giant, like smiling energy, just so happy.
Yeah.
He was so happy.
I remember meeting them for the first time, and they're like, "Do you think he's not too old to learn to enjoy like other dogs?" I was like, "No, he'll be just fine."
He'll be just fine.
He'll be just fine. I mean, it took him a little bit.
Yeah.
But he got there, and then I think he was able to have 4 years until he passed away.
Maybe 5?
4 or 5 years, yeah.
Yeah, he was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So just watching, and if you're someone who works with dogs in more of this kind of way, maybe you're a pack walker, maybe you work with dogs like we do, like off-leash, you probably feel this, and it's such a beautiful experience to be able to have in this field of work because of the amount of time you get to spend with the dogs over years and how much opportunity there is to learn.
Yeah, I feel like seeing things unfold over long periods of time, seeing dogs work through things and work through them to the full degree to where you're like, I haven't seen them do that for years. They've left it. It's gone, you know? That's a pretty powerful experience to have. Because I feel like, no offense to just dog trainers who work one-on-one with people, but when you see dogs for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours each week in so many different settings, because we'll work with dogs here at the ranch, then we'll go camping, we'll go hiking in other locations, so on and so forth. But when you see them for so long over such an extended period of time, I feel like it can really confirm your work. And really show you what dogs are capable of, and then show you, at least for us, show us where we were falling short. Yeah, the time, over long periods of time, has been very fundamental, I think, in our confidence in handling dogs and helping them grow past things.
It's also hard. We've worked with people that have a similar structure, and to us it's harder than doing a one-on-one or than doing a board and train. Yeah,
no offense to those people who do that in one-on-one training and stuff, but working with many different dogs, off-leash,
on public land, on private land,
regardless, yeah. That's a different ball game.
That's it, yeah. Other people's dogs.
That's a different ball game. If you are a pack walker, kudos to you.
Yeah.
Hat tip to you. It's really hard work to do it well, but man, can you grow as a human being doing it? What it requires of us on such a fundamental and subtle level, the amount of emotional endurance and energetic endurance it requires is vast. It's not for the faint at heart, unless you're just walking a bunch of doodles around. Or just easy dogs. But yeah, a big thank you to just Oriental's pack and their humans, and all of them, every single one over the last, how many years did you say? 17? 17 years.
Yeah. If you're listening and your dog comes out with a pack, right now, we'll see you on Tuesday.
We'll see you on Tuesday. We have 2 more pack days until we leave again. But if you are somebody who has had a dog in the pack, thank you for putting forth the resources or the time to allow us to share time with them, because they have been our teachers over the years.
Yeah, we think about all of them too.
Yes, we do.
All of the past pack members. We wonder about them, how they're doing, or reminisce on just who they were, who they are.
Yeah. But yeah,
yeah,
it's been a heck of a journey, a joyful journey. I
think an important piece about why we wanted to record this, besides just reminiscing about the past and is enjoyable, is that we wanted to share what we've gone through.
Right. Yeah, where we started,
because people might meet us now and they might feel not a division, but feel a difference between what they're going up against or what they're feeling and maybe what we're feeling or expressing. And I think it's important for people to hear that we've gone through a lot of the experiences that can happen.
Yeah.
And that we didn't start this just effortlessly with the Jentle Method just there for us, and we just jumped
served
on
a silver platter.
Yeah.
No.
That we've gone through a lot of the experiences that you can have.
Yeah, and we're just here trying to smooth out the road that other people have.
Yeah.
As much as possible. As much as there will be willing to let other people help. But yeah, it's been a long journey, a hard journey, tearful journey, sweaty journey, rainy, cold, hot,
dog slobber journey,
frustrating, just all of the things.
Yeah.
But man, we will say the last 7 years has just been smooth,
I would say
as can be.
Maybe 8 years.
Sure. It's been so smooth, so enjoyable. Still a lot of work if we're onboarding new dogs, of course, because they don't know what harmony is just yet, but for the rest of them, I just get to enjoy.
And they look at the new dog and they think, oh, you'll get here eventually.
You'll figure it out.
You'll figure it out.
They'll help you.
Yeah, maybe I'll play with you in a couple months.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I wanted to finish what I was mentioning earlier about just the kind of dogs that have come through, the variety of dogs that we've had come through and that we've worked with and had as pack members over the years. I was mentioning that we've had puppies that started as soon as they can, and then they'll go through their life, meaning we've also had senior dogs that maybe need a modified day. We've had dogs that are recovering from injuries, from surgeries, and so we will modify their day as well to their needs while still giving to them. Obviously, after they've gone through a certain level of recovery. We've had deaf dogs, Stitch, but also others that have come out, been off leash, enjoyed the day just like everyone else. We've had a pregnant dog, dogs in heat.
I still forget that he's deaf. Like, I'll go months and then you'll say he's deaf and I'm like, oh shit.
I know.
I forgot. Because he's so normal.
I know. That's how I felt about the other ones.
I know. It's so weird when you say it. I'm like, oh shit. I'm looking at him right now with his tongue sticking out, passed out. I'm like, you're deaf.
Yeah, you've always been deaf. Yeah, we've had pregnant dog come out. We've had dogs in heat, intact dogs. We've had siblings by birth come out. We've had housemate siblings. We have 2 groups of those right now, actually, and a third will start next year. We've had a mother and her child come out at the same time. We've had dogs that are in bite work come out. And then just the usual kicked out of other services, not friendly with dogs, no, never been off leash, just all the behaviors as well. I think we had one senior dog that was blind.
Oh, yes, you're right.
So we'll throw blind dogs on there as well. And we've had some that are like going blind.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
But I think that we had one actually.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in like her last year with us.
Yeah.
So kind of, and then just all the breeds.
Yeah.
All the breeds, all the mixes, we have no breed restrictions. We have no age restrictions.
Mm-hmm. Just gotta be healthy.
We just gotta be, and if you're not healthy, we'll modify our day for you.
Yeah.
And make it work.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's the history of Oregon Tales. And there's other gnarly stories and this and that.
Silly stories and.
But we'll just leave you with those things as a nice idea of some feeling that what we've gone through. So we appreciate you. And if you made it this far, then thank you for sharing that much time with us and hearing about how we've gotten to where we are today. So until next time, enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you.